What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the BK Nothing But Nets podcast, linked together with the Nets Press podcast. This is the first one we're kind of doing jointly together, so welcome. We've got a fun little show for you guys today. First and foremost, of course, welcome my co-host, Gary. If you want, plug in your Twitter real quickly, so this way we can find you.
Oh, yeah, sure. Let me put it on the bottom here.
Sounds good. Yeah, so today we're going to bring you guys my updated top 75 big board. It was posted to Twitter. It's pinned on my account at NetsPress. But if you want to see the full descriptions, I have player comps up until the first round. I think the first pick of the second round. There's a couple of players here and there that I don't have. But this is my top 75. So we'll go down in the list of order. As you can see, they're broken down by color as well. This is based on tier of how I feel the players should be projected. I know Gary's got a ton of questions. If you guys have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. But we're going to start it off, of course, Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper. These are the only two picks in the draft that I currently have listed as solidified. Flagg going number 1, Harper going number 2. I think we can kind of all agree on that as of right now. Unfortunately, we will no longer be seeing the Rutgers duo as their season comes to an end and they are not going to be in any form of tournament play. So a very disappointing season for Rutgers. But that's kind of what happens when you put two incredible talents together on an absolutely horrible program. Coaching staff is horrible. The role players they have around them are horrible. It was like watching a borderline Division II basketball team with two NBA talents. It's exactly what you expected when you're playing really good competition in the Big Ten. So Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper going 1 and 2. As you can see here, I have pro comps, and it goes from floor to ceiling, so that's where the dashes come into play. The floor that I see for Cooper Flagg is Jalen Johnson of the Atlanta Hawks, a versatile 4 that can space the floor as well, play, make, rebound at a high level, and defend at a high level. Really not a bad player for a floor, if you ask me. And his ceiling, it says Scottie Pippen, but I kind of mix it as like a modern-day Scottie Pippen, so add the floor spacing, add the athleticism, just a lot to Scottie Pippen's game I see in Flagg. What are your thoughts if you had to give a floor and a ceiling to Cooper Flagg? Do you agree with these two? Is there somebody else that you may see for a floor and a ceiling that you would replace with?
I'm trying to think. I like Jalen Johnson as a floor, although I think he's better at everything than Jalen Johnson was at that age. So yeah, that's a good floor. I actually think the floor is a better Jalen Johnson, like a rich man's Jalen Johnson. I hate Scottie Pippen with a passion. Like I just think he's the most overrated player out. So I don't really want to use Scottie Pippen, but I get it. I was gonna say Grant Hill, but Grant Hill couldn't shoot. Like I already think Cooper Flagg at this age, and I don't even think Cooper Flagg is a great shooter. He's already a better shooter than Grant Hill was at Duke.
Yeah,
right.
I completely agree. My problem is there was so many people that had comps for him as Scottie Pippen. I personally see more of Apollo Banchero, a guy who was the best player at Duke, wasn't really the best shooter in college, but his inside game, his athleticism, his rebounding, all at an elite level. That's kind of similar to what I saw with Paolo at Duke, because I'm a Duke guy, so I've been watching them since Kyrie committed there. What is that now, 16 years? So to me, I see a little bit more Paolo than I do Pippen. I already see the AK-47 comps. I completely disagree with it. Like maybe as a floor, but as a ceiling, God no. I think that's just flat out disrespectful to Flagg. What's the hatred for Pippen though? What is
It's not like that I even hate him. I just think he's grotesquely overrated. Like I you know, if he was in today's game, he's a dime a dozen, right? Like I just think he was a wing defender, a versatile defender who's offensively below average, right? Like you think of he was a high turnover, low efficiency shooter who we were told could do everything. I'm like, he's not that good. Like when people they say like, who's better, him or Jason Tatum? I'm like, is that a real question? Like, do you really need me to answer that? Like Tatum is better at everything. So it's not like I hate him. I think he has a function. But when people mention him as like one of the great small forwards of all time.
Yeah, that I definitely don't see. One of the best second options of all time, maybe. But as in terms of the small forward position as a whole, definitely not. I mean, you can immediately put LeBron and KD over him. You could put you could even put Tracy McGrady over him.
He played against Grant Hill 5 times a year, and Grant Hill used to cook him. And it's not just the one crossover that everybody knows. Grant Hill, they couldn't stop him, right? Now, Grant Hill couldn't shoot. Like, Grant Hill was like the the floor model, right? Like we haven't perfected this yet, right? Then you got McGrady, right? And McGrady was a little taller and he could shoot. And then you got guys like Tatum and Paul George, and it's a progression. But Grant Hill was like the first guy that was like 6'7", 6'8", 3, small forward who could crush you right to left, crush you left to right. Like that guy didn't exist. They were all little guys. They were Kevin Johnson, Tim Hardaway, Rod Strickland. You didn't have a small forward who could handle the ball and crush you up like Grant Hill, right? So like when I hear people say like Scottie Pippen is one of the, I'm like, he wasn't the best small forward of his own era. Grant Hill was way better than him.
Definitely. No, I definitely agree. It's so hard to put a ceiling on Flag simply because he's a very unique caliber of a player, right? Especially for modern day basketball. A lot of the top guys that you see coming out of the drafts are always guys that are high level explosive scorers, bring some form of high level athleticism. For him, he's kind of just has an elite talent at every single portion of basketball, right? As a playmaker for his size, elite. As a rebounder, his size with his weight, elite. His athleticism for his size, elite. His defense is probably his best, category of play as of right now, incredibly elite. Scoring, he's efficient, highly efficient, and even getting more and more efficient from three as the season progressed. You can say that his scoring is on the brink of being elite. So it's very tough to put a ceiling on a player of his caliber. I also see little stints of Larry Bird, just lesser of the shooter, more athletic, like a modern day Larry Bird. It's very tough though to put an exact ceiling on him. I absolutely love the Jalen Johnson floor though, because they play very similar, right? Not incredible 3-point shooters, but have progressed in the NBA. High athleticism, high rebounding, high defensive caliber, and very good playmakers for their size and at their position. So I can definitely see that Jalen Johnson as the floor. At number 2, Dylan Harper, 6'6" guard out of Rutgers. Again, the floors are a little tough to compare to. I have him listed for Kobe White. Again, it's a high caliber role player in the NBA at least, with his ceiling being Cade Cunningham. Now, there's people that'll say James Harden. There's people that'll say a taller Jalen Brunson. I absolutely love the Cade Cunningham fit. Same exact size, same exact style of play. If you look at the way that they handle the ball, the way that they create their own space, it's almost identical. The Cade fit is 100% how I see him turning out in the NBA if he reaches his potential. So, I mean, for me, that's one of my favorite players in the entire draft. Wherever he goes, I think he'll make an immediate impact in terms of individual statistics. Again, it depends on the team that he goes to, whether or not he's going to make the impact in terms of winning, but definitely a high caliber playmaker, high caliber scorer, clutch scorer as well, can finish at all 3 levels, and very solid defensively for a guard as well. So I absolutely love the Cade Cunningham fit there. Surprisingly enough, I know a lot of people are very 50-50 on this, but I have VJ Edgecombe at 3 currently, simply because of the consistency issues with Ace Bailey and the raw prospect that he is. VJ is a little bit more well-rounded in my eyes. He's a high-level 2-way player that can score from all 3 levels of the floor. He's starting to get better from 3. His athleticism is top tier for his size, and simply a very, very special defender as well. At 6'5", he can play the 2 guard. I'd like to see him potentially transition into a 1 guard in the NBA, simply just because, again, he is 6'5". He's a little bit on the skinnier side. Reminds me a little bit of a Westbrook, Ja Morant-like player. Maybe not as good of a playmaker just yet as either of them, but he's shown signs of it early in the season when his efficiencies were low. He was averaging roughly 5 assists. I think he's down to 3.5 currently because his scoring has gone up. But to me, I see a very, similar mixture to like a Jalen Green, Jaylen Brown type of player. Jalen Green being, if his defense and playmaking doesn't translate into the NBA, being more of a Jalen Green. If his defense and his scoring efficiencies go up, I can see him more of like a Jaylen Brown caliber player.
I think this Jalen Green is his ceiling. I don't hate VJ Edgecombe. I think his floor is Emmanuel Mudiay. Like, I think he can bust. I really do. Like
he definitely does have a high boomer bust rate. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say he's got a high upside, but he's got the best chance of busting too. I agree with everything he said on Harper. Harper's actually my favorite player in the draft. Like if the Nets picked 1, I would just take Harper. I know that's not going to happen. I know they're going to take Flag, and that's fine. But I think Harper's the best player in the draft. And then Edgecombe, I agree with the upside. Everything you said, I agree with. But I think his lack of offensive polish like could make him the next Emmanuel Mudiay.
Interesting.
I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying I think I think the bust rate's high on this guy.
Yeah, I definitely think it depends on the team that drafts him, right? Because again, he's playing at Baylor. There's not really a big second star there that kind of helps him out. So he's as a 2 guard, he's more so looking at point guard roles over there, and he's also still playing high level minutes and high caliber defense throughout the entirety of a game. And you've kind of seen, whether it's in college or in the NBA, guys who are playing 2 ways. It's very hard to keep that consistent on both ends of the floor. He's kept it very consistent defensively. The offense started really slow the first 12 to 15 games of the season. But since then, he's really been showing the consistency offensively, which is why I kind of see like a Jaylen Brown caliber of a player, right? Brown's like 6'6", 6'7" almost, a little bit smaller for VJ. I also see Anthony Edwards comps, but I think it's too high of a ceiling currently, especially with how low his floor could be. To me, though, I really see Jalen Green as the floor simply because I don't view Jalen Green as a first or second option in the NBA. I view him more of as a third, again, high caliber scorer, but very inconsistent as a scorer. And defensively, he's not all there. This is where, VJ I could see being a little bit higher than him in terms of floor, simply because he does have that elite level defense at his size and at his position. So it really just depends on how you view the player. Again, I kind of threw this together. I made this all within the last 16, 18 hours. I've had the list of players in order for about a week, but in terms of the comps, I'm still trying to watch more games and break them down a little bit more in that aspect. So the player comps will change as the draft process comes a little closer. Rankings will change also based on how players perform in March Madness. Like, for example, Jeremiah Fears is going to be able to play in March Madness, but Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper aren't. Could that jump him over Ace Bailey? Who knows? Kaman Malawak, another player who's going to be playing in the tournament, but, a guy like, let's see, Asa Newell may not be. Who knows who's going to be in the tournament just yet? We'll actually find out, I believe, at 6 or 7 o'clock, so in 2 to 3 hours. It's Selection Sunday. We'll figure out who's in the tournament. So it'll definitely depend on who's playing further into the season and the level of play that they're playing in the tournament, if they'll start rising or falling in the draft class. But at number 4, one of my favorite prospects of them all, but again, I personally think that this one specifically has the biggest boomer bust, and that's Ace Bailey. At 6'10", he's one of the most gifted scorers that we've seen in college basketball since probably Kevin Durant. Again, similar height, similar weight, probably more athletic than Kevin Durant was in college, but doesn't have the number 1 star scoring ability like a lot of people thought he would. I
love the Kevin Durant because he's not. I mean, Kevin Durant is like the best scorer you've ever seen in your life. He's not that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny too because I'll pull it up right now. But if you look at the stats on both of them in college, they're actually very, very similar, more so than you think. Let's see. I'm going to pull up KD's first. His college stats at Texas, his 1 year was, let's see. And like I said, this is the difference between being the number 1 and the number 2, though. In 35 games at Texas, he averaged 25.8 points, 11 rebounds, 1.3 assists. By far the better scorer and rebounder, but again, as a number 1 option. Also, it was a very different time in college basketball. Not as many gifted freshmen were coming in of Kevin Durant's nature. And if you look at Ace Bailey's stats, he's currently averaging 17.6 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 1.3 assists. So the assists and playmaking aspect is identical to Kevin Durant. And that was the biggest question mark on Ace Bailey is, oh, well, he can't play make, so why should he be ranked in the top 5? That's something that will pan out, I believe. He showed some progression towards the end of the season. So for him to have only 1.3 assists, it makes sense because you have Dylan Harper next to you, who's the primary ball handler and facilitator. The 7.2 rebounds, again, I think that's going to translate well at his height, especially if he puts on a little bit of weight. He's currently listed at 200. If he gets up to that 220 mark, I think he'll be a beast. And again, the 17.6 points when you're playing next to Dylan Harper, who's averaging 19 to 20, think about it. Take Dylan Harper off of that team. What is Ace average? Probably similar to that 25 that KD was averaging. So 46% from the field as well. It was better efficiencies, I believe, than Kevin Durant. Let's see, 46% for Ace. KD stats in college, his efficiency was 47%. So a 1.3% difference in KD's favor. So definitely a very similar comp. But again, the ceiling level, I don't think you can put to KD yet simply because we haven't seen Ace play in the NBA. So that's why I have him currently listed with a floor of Michael Porter Jr. and a ceiling of Tracy McGrady. Before anybody goes crazy, if you remember what high school and college Michael Porter Jr. was, you would have thought he was the number 1 pick in the draft the year that he came out. Due to that back injury, he fell to the last pick in the lottery to Denver, and he's turned out to be their third option, a high caliber role player and catch and shoot 3-and-D defender. That's not a bad comp to me whatsoever.
No, I think this is I love this one. It's Porter and McGrady. Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the reason why I have him at 4, though, is again, it's based on a lot of teams are going to draft based on talent, but there may be a few out there who are more so contenders or closer to play-in playoff teams than there are still rebuilding that may need the better fit rather than the best available high upside player. Teams that could potentially go VJ over Ace is a team like Charlotte, is a team like Toronto. There's multiple teams out there that I see potentially taking a guy like VJ over Ace, which is why I have Ace at 4. Again, as a high upside prospect and just the ceiling that he has, I definitely agree with most people that he should go number 3. But there are a select few teams out there that would likely take VJ over Ace simply based on fit and upside. Like New Orleans, Charlotte, and Toronto, I think are the 3 teams I see. If they land the 3rd pick, they would go VJ over Ace. But again, it just depends on how the GMs want to draft. Are you drafting based on the highest upside? Or are you drafting based on great fit with upside? If either or, it's going to be VJ or Ace at 3. Moving on to number 5, I got Jeremiah Fears, and yes, that is correct. I do have him at 5th. A lot of people have him in the range of that 8 through 13 spots, but to me, with the way that he performed in the conference playoffs that they just had, I think it's a no-brainer that he has some of the highest upside in this draft. He is one of the youngest players as well, along with Cooper Flagg and Ace Bailey. He's just 18 years old. He reclassified, so this way he is a year younger than most people on the college level as a freshman. But at 6'4", I can see a little bit of a mixture of Jaden Ivey and Ja Morant. The athleticism is not as high as Ja Morant, but the finishing ability above the rim is very similar. And the way that he can score at all 3 levels of the floor, not incredibly efficient from 3, but again, similar to what Ja Morant was in college. The playmaking aspect to his game is very very good as well. So I can definitely see at his best a potential Ja Morant. Gary, what are your thoughts on him at 5?
I watched a lot of him because I'm a Texas fan, so I watched a lot of Oklahoma because I hate them. He's really good. Like me and Dylan talked about this. He said if you take Trey Johnson off the Longhorns and you take him, it's Fears off the Sooners, who's got a better team? Well, it's Texas, and it's not even close, right? And Oklahoma is somehow better than Texas. So Fears is a much better player than Trey Johnson as far as a winning piece is concerned. So you're right to put him this high. I don't love the Ja Morant. I'm trying to think of a better comp because I don't think he has the athleticism of Ja Morant. And I also think he's a better pure point guard. Like I think he's a better playmaker. I think he's a better distributor than Ja.
Really?
Yeah.
Ja's a guy that's currently averaging like that, like 7 to 8 assists per game. You think he can be potentially better than that?
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, he's in. You're right. Ja putting together a high assist season. But like you look at Ja and you think of a guy who's just going to attack the basket, and Fears can do that. But if you want to, slow the offense down and have him play distributor, I think Fears is better at that than Ja. Like Jamal Murray, but he's probably more athletic than Jamal Murray.
I would say slightly more athletic. I see a comment right there that says Fears is similar to a Westbrook. Again, it's tough because he doesn't have the athleticism of a Westbrook or a Morant, but he has a very similar style of play.
He's already a higher IQ player than Russell Westbrook, right? Like
I agree.
Yeah. I don't love I understand what you're saying, but I don't love the Westbrook comp.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And we have Leaf joining here shortly. I know that he's in the back room. We're going to keep him there just until the lottery's finished. Because I want to try and get through some of these as quick as possible before we move on to the mock draft portion of this. So Jeremiah Fears at 5. I have Kaman Malawak at 6. Again, this could be a little high for some people, but to me, he is the rawest prospect behind Ace Bailey. Could potentially even be more raw than Ace Bailey is. At 7'2", he has shown that he can space the floor. It's not incredibly efficient just yet because he also hasn't taken a lot of attempts in college. He's been on a minutes restriction, roughly playing about 20 minutes per game at Duke. But I can see him really as a Clint Capella, Mark Williams combo. And I think that's incredibly high in today's NBA. A guy that can rebound, a guy that can block shots. But the difference between Mark Williams and Capella is they really can't space the floor. Maliwak has that upside to where he can become a floor spacer at the 5. And that's definitely something that I can see being very highly valued in terms of some of the teams that are selecting between that 5 through 8 spot. You have teams like OKC, New Orleans, Charlotte, Toronto could use a big man. Chicago could use a big man. There's a lot of teams in the top 10 that could use a big, including Brooklyn. So at the 6th spot, I definitely see a team who maybe misses out on one of those high caliber guards or wings in this top 5 that we currently have, trying to take a little shot on Maliwak at those 6 through 8 spots. Have you gotten to see Maliwak play at all yet? What are your thoughts on him?
I did. I just, I like the Maliwak. I'm really high on Maliwak. I like the comp. It's hard to comp out because he's kind of a unique guy. He's a little bit of a unicorn. But I think the upside on him is tremendous. If you said, besides the top couple of names, like who could break out? Like who could really be a all-star caliber talent, like a game changer?
Yeah.
I would say Maliwak based on his upside.
I definitely agree. He's very dominant in terms of his paint presence, shooting over 70% from the field. Like I said, he hasn't taken many threes in college, but he has shown that he can hit them at a decent rate.
Yeah.
So I definitely think, depending on the team that drafts him, if they really focus on his 3-point shooting built into their game plan, I definitely can see him being like a 30 to 35% 3-point shooter who can also be very dominant and efficient inside, similar to what Mark Williams is. Of course, health is always an issue with a guy of his size. I believe that's why he's on a minutes restriction. There's been multiple games where you can see him gassed, conditioned-wise, throwing up under the basket. Like there's definitely some concerns with the conditioning portion of his game. But again, when you're talking about upside, rawness of the prospect, he is by far one of the best players in the class that you could potentially develop into a star. At number 7, the Texas man himself, Gary's guy, Trey Johnson. Again, if this was any other year, if this was last year, he goes top 3. He probably goes number 1 if it's last year, if to be quite honest. He's better than Zachariah Rishashar. The only person that I could even potentially compare him to in terms of draft ranking from last year's class based on hype was Alexander Sarr and Stephon Castle. So to me, Trey Johnson is still a very, very high caliber player at that 7 spot. The comps that I put for him is Cam Thomas and Tyler Hero. I think it's very self-explanatory. He is a very high-level scorer. The playmaking aspect to his game and the defense are a little bit of a question mark still. But at 6'6", he already has the upper advantage over a guy like Cam Thomas, simply because Thomas is a very undersized 2-guard, while Johnson fits more of the mold of a 2-guard. And not to mention, he has shown flashes of being a better playmaker than Cam Thomas was in college, which is why I have the Tyler Hero comps. Hero is a guy that's currently averaging around 23.5 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. I don't think that's that hard to accomplish for a guy like Trey Johnson if he's properly, fully developed. Johnson at 7, what are your thoughts on that? Is this correct? Do you think he should be higher? What do you think?
I mean, he is what he, like, it's pretty obvious what he is, and he's a bucket getter, right? Like, he can do 3 things. He can score, and score, right? So, he's 6'6", so he's got that. Like, that's the one thing. Like, if you were scouting these guys, you would take Trey Johnson over Cam because he's got 3 extra inches on him. Yeah. He's long, right? But, I think this is exactly right. Like, we kind of know what Trey Johnson is. He's going to be a defensive liability. He can score. Now, the question is, can he play make and can he create offense for others? We know that he can handle the rock, right? But can he create offense? Can he kind of play a 1 at times? Or, can he handle the ball? Can he create offense for others? It's going to be the question. He can, he can handle the ball and he can break the press. He can do that. He can bring the ball up the court. But can he get in a half court set? Can he create offense for others? Can he be like Hero? Or is he just, Cam Thomas with a better handle and a couple inches taller?
I definitely agree.
I definitely like these comps.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's very simplistic with him because, like you said, the 3 things he knows is score, score, score. So I can definitely see the floor of him being a high caliber 6-man level scorer, similar to what a lot of people thought Cam Thomas would be. Of course, Thomas has shown progression as a playmaker, especially during the last 5 games of his regular season before getting shut down. But again, the upside of a player like him could be that 23 to 25 a game with those 5 and 5 rebounds plus assists. So it's definitely interesting to see what his progression will be. To me, I would absolutely love to see a team like New Orleans fall to 7 and select him, simply because they have DeJounte who can play make for him, kind of taking that pressure off of him in terms of first-year development, but he would also be surrounded by high-caliber defensive wings in Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. Again, the big man position is probably the biggest question mark for New Orleans, which is why I think they should go for a guy like Malawak if they land through that 6 through 8 slots. And again, if they land any lower, going with a guy like Derek Queen, who is up next at the 8th spot. As 20 years old, again, I'm still trying to figure out how he's a 20-year-old freshman, but at 6'10", very, very interesting prospect. He has a similar play style to a traditional big, but with a more modern version of it, which is why I have his player comps being an Alperen Sengun and DeMarcus Cousins. I really didn't set a floor on him if you're looking at the name-wise. I kind of just gave 2 players that I felt he could be at his best. Great footwork for his size, very dominant in the paint, not the best defender as a big man, but makes up for it offensively where he can score, he can rebound, and he can play make out of the post. Like I said, 6'10" out of Maryland. He just led them all the way to the championship game of their conference, which I believe they lost to Michigan in the final seconds of the game. Should be playing in March Madness, from my understanding. Again, we should know which teams are officially in within the next hour and a half to 2.5 hours. But to me, this is one of my favorite prospects in this year's draft. Again, he's not excessively tall at the position that he plays, but he's also not skinny to where he can't play the position either, which is why I kind of see him at that Sengun Cousins level in terms of ceiling. What are your thoughts on Derek Queen as a prospect? A lot of people have him in the range, like he could be going potentially 6. A lot of mock drafts have him in that 12, like 11 through 13 range. What do you think? Is the 8th spot for him proper, or do you think he should be higher or lower?
I would draft him higher, but there's going to be some questions. Is he a 4 or a 5, right? Can he defend 4s or 5s, or is he going to be a defensive liability? Yeah. Right? Those are my questions with Queen. Like, is there but offensively, I love his game. I love these comps. I would probably put him higher, but over who?
That's the problem, right? Because realistically, as a college big man, he is by far better than Kaman Malawak currently, right? So in terms of center,
Malawak over him,
exactly, because of the upside and the floor spacing that he has for his height, a lot of teams are probably going to take a guy like Malawak over Queen. And that's the thing too, is if a team takes Malawak, the pick below that team, or 2 picks below that team wanted Malawak, are they going to want Derek Queen over some of these guys that we have in between the rankings of 7 through 10, like the Trey Johnsons, the Kasparuses, the Konkaneppels? So that's where it can get a little interesting to see where Derek Queen's draft stock falls and rises to, simply because in terms of talent, I have him in the top 6. I do have him over Malawak in terms of talent. Him and Fears are pretty close, but I would give the edge to Fears. I would put him over Trey Johnson, but in terms of draft position, just based on team needs, upside, fit, I definitely I can see him going in that like 8 through 10 spot.
But I know for me, this isn't gonna be reality because everyone. I would move all of these guys up and bump VJ down. Like if it was me, VJ or Trey Johnson is a real debate, and I would take Queen before any of those guys. But,
really?
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, because like Trey Johnson, I know what he is. Like I know, for better or for worse, I know what he is. VJ's got so many question marks. Like the ceiling on VJ is way higher than Trey Johnson, right?
Yeah.
But I think that the floor is way lower too. Like that's my issue with VJ.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see where the issues are going to be brought up with VJ, and especially like you said, him, Ace, and Malawak within the top 10 to me are the biggest boom or bust players. So again, it's going to depend on the team that wants to take the risk on them. It's going to depend on the team who's selecting at 3. If it's Brooklyn, I see it being Ace. If it's a team like Charlotte, Toronto, New Orleans, I could see it being VJ, just because those teams are, powered by wings, right? Charlotte has Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller. They really don't need a 3. Toronto, they have RJ, who's likely to get traded, so they're going to need a replacement too, but they already have Ingram and Scotty Barnes playing in their 3 and 4, so they don't need an ace. New Orleans, they have Herb Jones, they have Trey Murphy, they have Brandon Boston. Do they really need another 3 or 4? So it's really going to depend on who's selecting within those ranges and how they want to draft. Are they drafting based on the upside, or are they drafting based on the fit? And some teams may be selecting based on fit, because let's be honest, a team like Toronto, New Orleans, Philly, San Antonio, Dallas, they shouldn't be in the lottery, right? They shouldn't be as high up in the lottery. But realistically, they are that one missing piece away. So I think for certain teams, especially teams like Toronto, Philly, like I said, San Antonio, New Orleans, they're going to draft based more on fit, which, say New Orleans lands at number 4 and VJ's off the board. Do they take Kaman Malawak over Jeremiah Fears and Ace Bailey? Like, there's a real potential for that happening.
Yeah, for me, I would have Malawak. The top 3, I would have Cooper, Dillon, and Ace. That's 1, 2, and 3. And for me, like, who would I put at 4? Probably Malawak at 4 and Fears at 5. Like, but those would be my 4 or 5 guys. Like, I'm looking at Malawak's upside, and I'm like, if we miss on this, like, he could be a game-changing player. And I think Fears is really safe. Like, I can't see Fears not being a very good NBA player. So my top 5 would be Dillon, Cooper, Dillon, Ace, Malawak, Fears. And then after that, I would look at VJ, Derek Queen, and Trey Johnson and kind of look at the pros and cons and the fits of those 3.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Question, because Fears is an Oklahoma guy as well, similar to how Trae Young was. Do you see any forms of comparisons with him and Trae Young? Because I feel like that's where the difference is, right? If you look at his style of play, it's very similar to a Morant and a Westbrook. But because the athleticism isn't there, is it closer to a Trae Young than it is to a Ja Morant?
He's got a much better body, and he's already a better defensive player. Like, he's a better defensive player now than Trae Young will ever be.
Definitely.
And he's got a better body. I mean, I can see, like, the game. Okay, I can see some comparisons in the game. But if you were honestly asking me, like, who I would pick, Fears or Young, I would take Fears. Like, if you give me, like, 19-year-old Trae Young and current Fears, I would take Fears. Yeah, because Trae Young's, like, his weaknesses are so glaring. Like, I'm not even, like, I don't hate Trae Young, but his weaknesses are so glaring to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I remember watching him in college, and he single-handedly led Oklahoma to that March Madness, right? Were they in the first round, or did they just miss it?
No, they were in the first round.
They were in. Yeah, I mean, it's just the way that he led Oklahoma is very similar to how I see Fears leading Oklahoma currently. So that's why I kind of brought up that comparison, because in terms of, player for player at the same college, style of play, I can definitely see where, the inside scoring and the playmaking aspect could be linked to a Trae Young, with the athleticism and 3-point scoring being more so linked to a Ja Morant, simply because Morant is not a great 3-point shooter in terms of efficiency. He's not bad, but he's not great. I think that's kind of similar with Fears. I don't think he's a great 3-point shooter, and he's actually a better 3-point shooter in terms of pulling up off the dribble than he is a catch and shoot 3-point shooter, which is kind of interesting to see nowadays, especially in modern basketball. Most guys are better catch and shoot than they are off the dribble, but it's vice versa for Fears. So it's interesting to see the comparisons that you can give him, which is why I also have somebody similar to Jaden Ivey. I think the athleticism is very similar to Ivey. He's no Ja Morant, but he's not athletic like Trae Young is. So it's going to be interesting to see how Fears pans out in the NBA. There's not a lot of teams that I see taking him within the top 5. Again, it's just depending on how the lottery system works, right? Like, I'm looking at it without doing a lottery. Utah doesn't need a point guard. Washington really doesn't need a point guard to me that's undersized to play next to Jordan Poole. Charlotte, depending on what they do with LaMelo, maybe, but I just don't see them. I could see more so like a VJ Edgecombe, a Trae Johnson, a Malawak, a Derek Queen to try and give LaMelo one more year there. New Orleans, they have DeJounte. I don't really think they need a point guard. Brooklyn, yes. Philly, no. Toronto, they have Emmanuel Quickly. Do they really want another point guard? Portland, they have guards like there's no tomorrow. Chicago, they're so bad, and they're going to try and revamp their guard room, but from what I've heard, that maybe they go for a guy like Fears. But again, it's a very small sample size of teams within the top 10 if you're just basing it on current position, not lottery, that don't really need a guy like Fears. Miami at 11 definitely could use a guy like him. Houston at 12 could definitely use a guy like him. Atlanta at 14 could definitely use a guy like him. The only team that I see in the top 10 that really needs a guy at point guard is either Chicago or Brooklyn, and they're at 5 and 9. So it's going to be interesting to see, whether a team trades up for him or if he gets selected higher than people expected to a team that, may not utilize him right away and kind of develop him more. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see. I know I got Leaf waiting in here, so I'm going to get through these next couple of picks quickly. Kasparas Giacochonis.
I'll let you cook.
Yeah, Kasparas Giacochonis at 9. I'm not as high on him as a lot of people are. He was all the way up to 4th in terms of draft position. A couple of weeks ago, probably, he was over VJ and Trey Johnson. I know that. But But to me, I could see a high caliber role player in like a Spencer Dinwiddie, or again, I could see a guy who can be a borderline all-star in Tyler Hero. Hero, like I said, averaging that like 23 to 24 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Jonas, at his peak could potentially be a player like that. Or he could be a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie, who at his peak was averaging 15 to 16 points a game and can make at a very solid level, but wasn't really, efficient consistently. And I think that's where the issues are going to fall with Kasparas. At number 10, I have Con Kneppel, 6'7" guard/forward out of Duke. The floor and ceiling is very low for him, but I definitely can see it being a little bit higher. I just try to stay more so realistic based on player style rather than, other departments in which you can compare floors and ceilings. But to me, Max Strus and Kevin Huerter are some of the guys that you can compare him to. Simply because, again, high caliber scorer in terms of 3-point shooting, catch and shoot threes, threes off the pick and roll or off the screen. He can space the floor and get open in terms of perimeter shooting. But he's also a much better defender than a guy like a Kevin Huerter. Max Strus is a solid defender, but again, I think Kneppel could be a little bit better in terms of defense. So again, a high caliber 3-and-D player. And again, where I have him at 10, if there was no such thing as the lottery, currently San Antonio would be getting him. I think that's a perfect fit. So again, it depends on the team. I could see OKC taking him as high as 7 if they get that Philly pick. I could see him going as low as 12, where Houston is. So it depends again on the team that's going to want to take the risk on him, or the team that's going to want to plug him in right away as a role player. At number 11, I have 6'11" forward out of Georgia, Asa Newell. Comparisons are pretty simple. Marvin Bagley has a ceiling, Noah Clowney has a floor. If you remember Bagley coming out of college, he was a top 3 pick. He was supposed to be one of the best stretch fours to come out of the draft in a while, and he completely fell on his face, unfortunately. I see Asa Newell. He's not the greatest 3-point shooter in terms of efficiency. Noah Clowney wasn't either, though, in college. If you remember him at Bama, he was a sub 28% 3-point shooter. He's developed very nicely in the NBA with the Nets, but again, something that was a question mark for him coming out of college. So I can see the similarities with him and Asa Newell, which is why I have the 2 comparisons there.
Keith Van Horn for my Nets fans as a comp. I don't know if you're all about to remember Van Horn, but I think Van Horn's a decent comp.
I was definitely a little too young to remember the Van Horn era, so I'm gonna have to allow your elderliness. Yes, your elderliness to get the best of me on that one. But yeah, I mean, you can make the like I said, comparisons are really just based on predictions, personal thoughts. Like, to me, when you have a lengthy, taller wing that plays the 4, you're thinking more along the lines of those like stretch 4s that have come out recently. So to me, I saw Clowney and Bagley. But at number 12, I have the UConn forward at 6'7", Liam McNeely. Corey Kispert, Gordon Hayward. This is, again, one of the better comparisons I think that I've come up with. A high-level 3-point shooter. Again, he can shoot off of the screen. He can shoot with a catch and shoot. Not the greatest creator of his own shot just yet. But again, if he is brought to a system like a Miami, I could see him having a ceiling similar to a Gordon Hayward, where Hayward was a guy in college that was very, again, catch and shoot off the screen 3, was able to put the ball on the floor a little bit better than McNeely was in college. But, in terms of how he can progress in the NBA, it's going to depend on the system that he's put in. But I think those comps are very, very solid. Hayward, to me, was never a first option. Even when he was with Utah, if you just looked at the team that was around him, I never even saw him as a real second option. But a high caliber third option, I could see him peaking at that if properly developed. And again, Corey Kispert, very solid role player. I wouldn't say high caliber, but that's definitely the floor that I have set for Liam McNeely. And then at number 13 and 14, I have Noah Esengu and Colin Murray-Boyles. I can't put a player comp on Esengu. He's playing in France. I have not watched him play a single bit of basketball. I'm basing it more so on stats, other mock drafts, and just kind of like peer review. So to me, I'm going to have to try and watch more highlights on him because I'm never going to be able to catch a real game of his. But the 18-year-old 6'8" wing, I've heard has a lot of upside. So I'm going to try and figure out player comps for him shortly. But Colin Murray-Boyles at 14, again, this is a guy that could go a little bit higher, just depending on the team that's selecting within that like 9 through 14 range. I I could see him going as high as 8. Again, if a team like OKC gets that 76ers pick between, say 8 through 10, and Kaman Malawak and, Con Caneplo are already off the board, then I can definitely see Colin Murray Boyles going high to a team like OKC. But for me, it's a Draymond Green, Julius Randle fit. He does not have the floor spacing that Randle has currently, but there is some upside in that department that he can still work on within the NBA. But he is a very, very, very undersized wing at 6'7", primarily playing the 4. That's where I kind of see the comparisons with him and Draymond. He's a high caliber rebounder, high caliber defender, much more athletic than Draymond Green has ever been. But that's where I kind of see the comps, as a defensive Draymond Green with a lesser offensive version of Julius Randle. The lottery's finished. If you guys want to leave your thoughts on that, we're going to speed tour through the first round and the second round, because I do want to get into the mock draft. We've kind of been going already for 25, 30 minutes almost.
40.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to try and speed it up a bit, because I do want to get this finished for you guys before the Nets game at 6. I'm going to bring in LBL and Leaf. What's going on, guys? How are you?
Hey,
I'm all right.
I'm good.
All right. What's going on, man? Why are you just all right?
I'm on my way home. Really tuning into you guys.
In terms of the mock draft that I've been seeing the past couple of days, and on top of the Sabonis news, as a Nets fan, I've been highly disgusted. And it's just making me sick to my stomach, all the stuff that I'm seeing on Twitter. I don't really have too much to say about it, man. I mean, I'm open to a lot of people's opinions, man. I mean, Dylan, you probably talk with the most prowess about like who these players honestly are.
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't. I really could give a damn, bro. I know what I want, man. I got my mind made up.
I hear you. I'm very similar in sense of who I would be 100% happy for, and a guy who I would be more so like, see, I told you guys we should have tanked better, but hey, I'm also going to be excited no matter who we get, simply because as a Nets fan growing up in Jersey, again, I'm only 23, so I've been watching for 20 years that I can remember. I was in front of a screen, I know, when I was young, but it's the first lottery pick in Brooklyn. So
I think in terms of the tanking, bro, like I would just like to point out to everybody in here and anybody that's listening, we have not tanked. We've organically done this the right way, and I've said this from the beginning of the year. And if you look at the Wizards right now, and they've been winning. They won last night. Alex Sarr won me $50 because he put up 30-something points last night. I told people Alex Sarr was a lot better than a lot of people thought he was.
I had him going number 1 last year and Castle going number 2.
Well, the only reason why he didn't go number 1 is because he didn't want to go to the Atlanta. He wanted to go to Washington because his homie Bilal was over there. But I like, in terms of I don't really like to use that word, because I felt like this entire year we've done everything the right way. And for those that don't believe me, you could go look up Philadelphia 76ers under investigation, along with under a couple of other teams. Like I said, that was going to happen, and nobody listened to me. And now we down to the final stretch of the season. Cam Thomas is out, and I have no interest in bringing him back to this team next year. We need to rebuild this entire roster.
Hot take. You're gonna piss off Breezy if he's.
I don't think that take is as hot.
Like, I don't think that take is hot at all. Yeah. Like Breezy. Listen,
popular, but I don't think it's that hot.
It could be unpopular. It could be non-hot. I think it's an honest take, because the thing is, 60 lost teams, 60 teams that's on the verge of losing 60 games don't keep the same roster intact. They flip the damn thing, bro. Like that they don't keep the same roster intact that they kept losing 60 and 50 games with. They don't do that. You know what I'm saying? So but as far as LaMelo goes, and far as the Sabonis goes, bro, man, listen to me, bro. Like I'm uninterested, bro. Like, I mean, at this point, man, you might as well say we should pick up Zion for his fat friendly contract. So I don't care, bro.
We should.
Do you mean fat friendly contracts in terms of weight, or his contract being fat with money?
Fat friendly contract, I mean, in terms of both. Listen, I don't think we could really go wrong, man. Like, I mean, out of all of the players that stay injured when he's on the court, Zion is probably the most unstoppable. I don't really believe in nothing that LaMelo Ball does. in terms of he's a part of a long line of high volume super high volume scorers, bro, on low percentage, man. That's don't do right, and high turnovers and things like that. Charlotte they training staff need to get better. They remind me of the training staff that Portland had when they had Brandon Roy, because guys is just breaking down. But
you could
other
also
than that,
it similarly to the training staff that Golden State had, the first couple of years of Steph's career with the ankle injuries that he had.
I mean, I would, but Steph realistically only sat out 1 year, so I can't really, equate it to that. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, a lot of people don't realize Steph played a good 65 to 70% of his games during the first couple of years. Yeah. It's just the NBA didn't have a gravity ball activated until 2013 when he put up 50 in the Garden. So I mean, it is what it is. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, listen, real quickly, I'm going to get through picks 15 through 30 before we make any more comments, just because I do want to get to the mock draft within the next 25 minutes. So I'm going to speed run through the rest of the first round. I'm going to give you guys a couple of my second round picks and just give you a quick preview of some of the players that aren't available on Fanspo that I have listed maybe higher that should be getting drafted in the second round than what they currently have. The draft board that I have on Fanspo is missing roughly 7 players that I have on here that should be going within the first 2 rounds. They're all second round prospects, but real quickly, I'll just go through that now. Alex Condon out of Florida is not on Fanspo. RJ Lewis Jr. out of St. John's is not on there. Chaz Lanier out of Tennessee is not on there. Cedric Howard out of Washington State is not on there. Otega Awu out of Kentucky is not on there. And let's see, Sergio Delaria is also not on there. So those are the few players that aren't. So pretty much what we're going to do is Hunter Salas, CJ Lewis, Joe Sansanin, Jalen Lowe, John Mobley, Mackenzie Makabu. Those are going to be the few players that are towards the end of the second round of our mock draft in replacement of the few players that we listed that aren't currently on that website. Moving on to picks 15 through 30. Again, you guys can see the screen, so I'm not going to read everything in detail. I have Rasheer Fleming being the first pick out of the lottery. Again, it's just in terms of prospect ranking. It's not really specifically where they will be selected. So Rasheer Fleming is the 15th overall prospect that I have. Jace Richardson at 16. Again, I'm not going to count every single one. You guys can get the hint. Ben Seraph at 17, Nick Clifford, Igor Demin, Hugo Gonzalez, Nolan Traore, and Thomas Sorber. And as you can see here by the color coding that I have it listed in tiers. I can see these guys being high caliber role players, potential third option guys on teams. The green that I have in the 2 range here, these are guys that I could see being, high caliber second option stars, or as low as mid-level third option guys on their teams. And of course the top 4, which I have being your potential number 1s within the NBA. From ranks 23 through 30, I have Carter Bryant, Will Riley, Janai Broom, Noah Penda, Danny Wolf, LeBarian Filan, Cam Jones, and JT Toppin. So that rounds off the first round. Again, there's some player comps that I don't have specifically because either they are playing overseas and I haven't watched them play yet, or because I just don't have an idea of really who I can compare them to just yet. It's 75 players, so there's a lot of work that I still have to do before the draft comes around, before I have all these player comps available. But in terms of the remainder of the first round, I'm going to start it off with LBL because we haven't heard from him yet. LBL, what are your thoughts on those prospects ranked 15 through 30? I'll try and pull up.
Well, I haven't seen most of them play, but I like the Fierce pick just based on limited video I've seen of him. I do like the Fierce pick. But I'm like, we have to go scout out a lot of these young guys. And what I want people who are athletic. If you're not athletic, I really got to pass on you, unless you're Larry Bird or something, you know what I'm saying? So.
I can definitely agree with that. I think the NBA has transitioned into a much more athletic game. If you don't have guys who are athletically gifted as well as they are offensively and defensively gifted, it kind of defeats the purpose of what they're doing on both ends of the floor. So I can definitely see why athleticism will be focused on in this year's draft. And again, I think it's a great draft to do so. There is a ton of athleticism, from the top 5 picks all the way to the mid-second round picks. There's a lot of steals in this draft. There's going to be a lot of guys that go undrafted who can make a name for themselves.
There might even be some potential starters.
By far. There are definitely going to be some guys that can start in terms of high caliber role play. Like Rasheer Fleming, is a junior. I have him ranked 15th. If he goes to a team like, say, Orlando, Atlanta, there's a few teams out there, San Antonio, there's some teams out there that he could genuinely be the sixth man right off the bat. Nick Clifford, if he goes to Orlando, I have him listed at 18. He could be their starting two. He could be the sixth man that comes off the bench and for Franz Wagner. There's a lot of guys that are going to get high caliber minutes right off the bat. And that kind of brings me into the second round. You can see the first three guys are seniors and juniors. Adou Thiaro out of Arkansas, one of my favorite prospects later in this draft. I have him falling out of the first round only because he's been injured the last couple of games, and there's been a couple of risers, such as Cam Jones and JT Toppin. Maxime Renaud, again, I could be butchering that name, 7'1" senior out of Stanford. And then Yaxel Lendeborg. If you guys have been keeping up with college basketball the past week, he has had a 30-20 game, and he just had a 20-20 game before he got hurt. I don't know if the injury is serious or not. I'll have to look into it a little bit more. But
Maxime Renaud is a name that popped up on my feed a lot.
Yeah, he's very dominant inside.
Maxime Renaud, the second coming of Brook Lopez.
Interesting.
That's kind of disgusting, but I mean, whatever.
Hey, listen, Brook Lopez is doing it at the age of 38 on a team where he already won a championship. And not to mention, him and Al Horford are probably the only two big men that came out of that, mid to early 2000s draft classes that were able to stay in the NBA because they transitioned their games into guys who can stretch the floor. So in all honesty, if that's his comparison, that's a guy that can play for 15 years. I can't complain with that.
I'm okay with it, but I feel like his upside as of right now is not really to that point. But if he becomes that, then we'll definitely come back to this conversation and say so. I'm not just totally disagreeing with it though.
Definitely. And real quickly too, because I want to get your guys' thoughts. We got LBLs. I have 15 through 30 here on the screen. Leaf, what are your thoughts on the players that I have listed 15 through 30? Do you think these are accurate? Are there a few players that you would move up into the first round that may be in the second round that I have listed? What do you think?
I think this looks pretty accurate to me. Sorba might be a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
I think Yegor maybe a spot or two. Yegor still to me is the best. Is by far the best playmaker in this draft.
Yeah.
Well, Fleming might be a bit high because I'm told we could get him in the mid-20s. His name came up a lot.
I see him in that 17 through 19 slots.
Yeah, Wolf and Broom, they probably might be on the back end of maybe 28, 29, or 30 or something like that. But JT Toppin, his name came up.
Yeah, he was projected late 30s, mid 40s about a week and a half ago. But over his last week and a half, 2 weeks, I had to put him at the end of the first round. His talent is undeniable as a stretch four. I mean, he's dominant inside. He's a high caliber rebounder. His defense is much better than what his brother's is. So I had to put him in the first round personally.
Definitely, but it seemed to me like if anything, we're probably gonna end up with Sorba.
The reasoning though I have Sorba at 22 is just because he's out for the season.
Right.
In terms of upside, again, there's a couple of players in this draft class, right? Igor was as high as top 5 within the first 3 weeks of college. Let's see who else is here. I'm going blank. Boogie Flan was a guy who was projected late lottery, just outside the lottery, who I have falling into the second round just because of his injury. But for those of you who don't know, Arkansas is going to make the tournament. He's projected to come back. He's actually practicing today to test out the wrist surgery that he had just gotten a couple of months ago. He was supposed to be out for the season. He's now coming back. Bearing any setbacks, he will be playing in the tournament, so that'll definitely raise his value potentially. And again, Thomas Sorber, I had him going as high as 16 at one point. But again, because of the season-ending injury, Georgetown's season is over. I could definitely see him slipping if there's a couple of players. For example, Janai Broom in the tournament, Will Riley in the tournament, Noah Penda, depending on the Euro League tournaments and what they have going on over there. JT Toppin, depending on the tournament. Adou Thiaro. There's a couple of guys who are going to be in the tournament that could rise above Thomas Sorber because of his season-ending injury. But in terms of talent, I definitely agree with you. He's top 18 in my eyes. He's by far the third best big man in this draft class in terms of age, talent, upside.
For sure. I would have to co-sign that absolutely, but I think more of what we're looking for. Like I think I'll be very, very comfortable if we could get a skilled player out of this draft, a highly skilled player out of this draft. I think Yegor fits the bill. Especially this late in the draft. If we could get him in between that 18 to 21 mark or whatever we're gonna fall at, whatever that Bucks pick fall at, I'm extremely happy because I know because as far as I'm concerned, bro, like I don't give a damn what anybody got to say. All the way up into the lottery, bro, we're getting a top 3 pick. I don't care what nobody says.
I hope you're right, because if you're jinxing it, I'm blaming you first. Real quickly, I'm going to speed tour through the second round, and then we're going to get into the mock draft. So again, first couple of picks here that I have in the second round, I have grouped into the fourth. What is this? The fifth tier that I have? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, fifth tier. Adu Thiaro, Maxime Renaud, Yaxel Lendeborg, Alex Condon, Boogie Flan, Dink Pate. I'm going to butcher this name. Juan Bergenger. I'm just going to say that. Alex Caraban, and then Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think these are high caliber role players in the NBA in terms of second round picks. As of right now, I believe Boston and Minnesota are within the top 3 of the second round. So you'd have to think they go veteran caliber players, which is why I have Adu Thiaro, Yaxel, Maxime, these types of guys up here. You got Charlotte with 2 picks in the top 5 of the second round currently, which is why I could see them going with a guy like Boogie Fland if he stays around those rankings as a potential LaMelo replacement if they trade him. Dink was originally projected mid-first round in the mid-20s. He's definitely taken a step back, but there's also just a ton of risers in this class. You kind of have to put him down. Again, I haven't watched Juan play yet, but he has been rising significantly on draft boards. A 6'9" center out of France. Caraban, again, another guy who was projected mid-20s originally at the beginning of the season. UConn hasn't really had the greatest season to what they were expected to do. But another guy who can be a high caliber. I kind of see him as like a Bojan Bogdanovic type of player at 6'8". And then Kalkbrenner, another 7'1" senior center out of Creighton. Another high caliber center that can be plugged in right away. I could see a team like OKC trading up for him without a doubt. My 6th-tier second rounders, currently I have Ian Jackson, Isaiah Evans, RJ Lewis Jr., Miles Bird, Drake Powell, Chaz Lanier, Alex Tui, Cedric Coward. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, but you see it there. Andrei Stojakovic, the son of Peja, Otega Awu, Darian Williams, and Jameer Watkins. That's kind of like my 6th-tier second rounders and 6th-tier prospects in general. Again, a lot of guys who could be high-caliber role players. Ian Jackson, Isaiah Evans, Drake Powell, Alex Tui, all being high upside role players who are young. And then, of course, to end off the second round, I have Xavier Lee, Tahad Pettiford, Cannon Catchings, Sion James, Sergio Delaria, Rocco Zikarsky, Peyton Sanford, and Tucker DeVries. Again, there's a mixture of young talent who could be developed for a year or two. And there's also a mixture of juniors and seniors who can be plugged in right away on contenders. Just outside of the draft, I have Hunter Salas, KJ Lewis, Josan Sannon, Jalen Lowe, John Mobley, Mackenzie Makabu, Kaderi Richmond, Michael Ruzick, Baba Miller. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, but it's a Visic's brother. Magoon Gwath, Flory Badunga, Aaron Scott, Tyrese Proctor, and Donnie Freeman. So that's kind of my top 75 currently. There's definitely some room for some of those, 60 through 75 players that could be changed depending on tournament play. And again, there's some guys in here. For example, Sion James, he's over at Duke. He could potentially climb. Jameer Watkins, I'm not sure if Florida State's making any tournament play this year, but I see him as one of the biggest steals in the late second round. So he's going to be staying in my, 45 through 60 rankings for sure. Chaz Lanier, a guy that could potentially rise. I don't know if UNC is making the tournament or not. I don't believe so. So Drake Powell, Ian Jackson, they could be potential fallers in this draft. Isaiah Evans, RJ Lewis could be risers. There's a ton of upside within the second round as well. Like realistically, if you take from Adu Thiaro probably all the way up until Alex Tui, those players within those ranges would have probably been late first rounders last year. That's how good this draft class is this year. Overall thoughts, I'm going to start with Gary. What are your thoughts on the 2 rounds that I have, the 75 players I have? Are there anybody, eyes that are catching that should be higher, that should be lower? Guys who maybe shouldn't be in those later ranges between like 60 through 75. What do you think? You're on mute.
Okay. I think Danny Wolf goes higher. Like I think he's going to shoot up. I'm not saying he goes lottery, but I think he's going to be closer to 20 than the bottom there.
I can see him getting taken over Sorber simply because there may be a team that needs a center to plug in right away as like a backup.
Yeah.
And also one that may more so need a veteran presence at the big man spot rather than a guy who's coming off injury that they need to develop. So I definitely agree. Again, the rankings aren't based on where I would have them selected. It's more so just based on the talent, the upside, and the current way that they've played in college. So, you'll see within our mock draft, we have a lot of different picks that are not corresponding to where I have them ranked specifically. But I can definitely agree that Danny Wolf will go a little higher than where I have him at, 27? So I definitely agree.
Then the other two questions I had, Boogie Fland and the San Diego State guard.
Miles Byrd?
Yeah, Miles Byrd. Have they fallen off that much? Are they projected to go this late? Like Boogie Fland was a potential lottery pick. I know there's questions about his game. Does it fit the NBA? Is it an antiquated game? But has he fallen off that much? We're talking about second round now.
Well, I mean, you have to think about it. When there's a guy that falls because of injury, right? It's not even just the injury portion to why he fell. He, throughout his college career as a freshman, shot 39% from the field with 15 points per game. So the efficiency is definitely a concern with the height that he has at the one guard for modern NBA. He's only 6'1", 6'2". So there's definitely some potential issues that you could see. Depending on how far Arkansas goes in the tournament and if he truly does play or not, I definitely see him going as high as maybe 25 through 29. I just don't see him getting above 25 anymore because of how many risers there are in this draft class. And again, there's going to be a ton of guys within this tournament that rise as well. So it's going to really come down to if he can be more efficient in the tournament and if he can pick up a win or two with Arkansas to move on to round 32 or maybe the Sweet 16. But I could definitely see him being an early second round to late first rounder. That's where I think his highest can be right now. But the second player you mentioned was Miles Byrd. Again, just efficiency issues. Very good defender, but there's a lot of guys that play that position that could go potentially higher, right? Like Will Riley has been a guy that's been up and down draft boards left and right. He was as high as 20 at one point. He was as low as 44 at one point. To me, he is a guy that has upside. And again, if you look at the comparisons that I have on screen, it's a Keyshawn George, who's currently playing for the Wizards, or it's Trey Murphy as a potential ceiling. I think there's going to be a little bit more of a need in wanting him at 6'8". He could play the 2, he could play the 3, more so than a guy who, like Miles Byrd, who's 6'7", he can play the 2 or 3. The consistency and the aspects of their games that they have, I think Will Riley kind of just edges him a little bit more than Miles Byrd would. And again, Noah Penda being another one, Cam Jones being a senior 6'5" shooting guard. There's a couple of players that could overtake him in terms of draft position. So it really just depends on how these teams play tournament-wise. I don't think San Diego State's even close to being in the tournament, so his season's probably done. But yeah, I don't know if Miles Byrd can rise any further than what I currently have him at, which is that like early second round, top 10 picks in the second round, top 15 picks in the second round, because of how much talent there really is. So I hope that kind of answers it. But real quickly, I'm going to stop the share screen because we're going to get into our lottery. And I am going to show you, I have not messed with it. We're only going to do one. So this way it is as realistic as possible. So Leaf, this is kind of where I get to blame you if we don't go top 3. Is that cool?
No, it's not, because we're all going to be top 3. You just got to take my word for it. If we not, you can blame it on the NBA because they screwed us.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Because you got to. The thing is, Dylan, you got to look at it this way, bro. If we did this stuff,
you're cutting out a bit, Leaf.
The thing is, Dylan, my only thing is this: if we did all of this if we did all of this and all these decided to man.
Yeah, Leaf, you're cutting out really badly. If you want, hop out and hop back in because I can't hear you at all right now. All right. I'm not sure if Leaf is still going.
Yeah, I'm here. My bad. My bad.
No, you're good. It cut out for a bit there. BTB says the NBA censoring him.
Yeah, the NBA. Yeah, the NBA was censoring me. I was on my way out the door actually. I'm in the street now, but if we did all of this organically and all these other teams is under investigation, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be rewarded.
I agree. If the lottery is rigged, they usually tend to favor the teams who have the highest markets and also the teams that aren't blatantly trying to lose. I could definitely see Brooklyn getting scratched into that top 3 spot because of that. But again, it's also the team that we root for. So 9 times out of 10, we get screwed. But yeah, I'm gonna do our first lottery sim real quick. Leaf, you're heading out, you said?
No, I'm staying here, man. I'm just in the car.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, so first lottery sim, 1 lottery sim only. This is how it's gonna go. Brooklyn falls to 6 instead of 5. Charlotte lands the number 1 pick and winning the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. New Orleans at 2, Toronto at 3, Washington at 4. You guys can clearly see the rest. We are going to use this in our mock draft, so this will be the newest updated mock draft that we're doing live. Don't mind me if it moves a little slow. I'm using an HP computer. Yes, my MacBook broke a while back. No, I'm not spending $1,000 on another one. So we're just going to have to live with this. Hopefully it doesn't lag for you guys as badly as it does for me. And as you can see here, I also have my updated mock draft on here, or big board on here as well. So real quickly, I have to reset it already because I didn't even select all the teams. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Now I can make the picks. So as you can see here, based on my big board, it is fully updated to be resembling the big board that I just went over with you guys. Like I said, there's about 6 or 7 players that currently aren't on Fanspo as well, which are in the second round. So you'll see some names missing like RJ Lewis, Alex Condon, a couple of other guys as well. So fully updated. We're going to make the picks as is. So with the number 1 overall pick, we're going to go Cooper Flag, of course, to Charlotte. The most fitting pick probably in this entire draft. Duke guy stays in North Carolina. It makes sense. So Cooper Flag going number 1. With New Orleans at number 2, again, I hate this pick for them because I really don't think he'll fully develop properly there unless if they move DeJounte Murray. I would have much rather seen them fall to 5 or 6 so this way they can go with a big man. But I'm going to select Dylan Harper. I don't see him falling past 2, no matter if it's the team that doesn't fit his current need, that doesn't have a current need for him. I think no matter what, they select him. At number 3 is Toronto. They currently have RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram playing their wings. I don't see them going wing, and this is exactly the scenario where I said if a team that doesn't need an Ace Bailey is selecting at 3, VJ goes, and that's exactly the route that we're going to take. So VJ Edgecombe goes number 3 to the Toronto Raptors. As you can see the stats on screen. Again, I'm not sure if they're fully updated or not just yet, but 15-3, almost 6 rebounds a game on 43.5% shooting. Top 3 is done. Does anybody have comments, thoughts that are within the panel currently?
I just got one. The day that the NBA give the Charlotte Hornets the number 1 pick, that's the day that we got to get up out of here. Yeah. We got to do something else. It's utterly disgusting.
See, it's funny because there's so much hate for the Hornets as an organization. Maybe I'm a little biased just because I moved to South Carolina last year. I'm gonna, at some point try and work for the Hornets because they're the closest thing to me. But I don't know. I feel like they have such a good thing going for them if they were to just fix their front office and coaching staff issues. They got Jeff Peterson as their GM now. He was originally Brooklyn's assistant, so I feel like that was a step in the right direction for them. But I definitely see them still needing to fix up their coaching staff. But when you have a young core that consists of LaMelo, Brandon Ingram, and Mark Williams, I really do feel like they're just one top-tier young pick away from potentially taking that leap similar to what Detroit just did. I don't know. That's just me. At the beginning of the season, I felt if fully healthy, Charlotte was going to be a play-in team. I was completely off on that prediction, as you can tell. But I don't know. I don't give as much hate to the Hornets organization as I do to teams like Portland, like Washington, like Utah. I don't know. That's just me, though.
I think the Charlotte Hornets, bro, they belong in the farmers market version of the franchises in the NBA. They have done nothing, and they have been.
Team.
Yeah, they've been bombed out and depleted, and many, many times over, bro. I think their best chance of making the playoffs was a couple of years ago when LaMelo played 70-something games, but that was just about it, man. I mean, I don't really see it getting any better. I really don't. I mean, it could get better than what it is, obviously, because when you just down far down in the gutter, like where can you go? You can only go up. I mean, but so if they raise up like a win or like 2 wins better, then it got better. But I don't really see it improving like astronomically, bro. Like I think we have a chance to get out of the gutter, man, and long before the Wizards, the Hornets, and the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, I agree. Question for you guys and chat. You guys can answer this as well. I didn't come up with a specific, yes or no to this question just yet, but do you guys want me to do a couple of trade ups and trade backs that I feel may be realistic in the draft as well? What do you guys think?
Let's just run with this, and we'll do that next time. We'll do
that next time. Sounds good. Yeah, because we're working on a 45-minute timer until the game starts anyway.
The second that you said trades, bro, I almost threw up, bro. Like because I had to remember that the RGM is not good at trading. He's very
for the last
bad
4
at
years,
it.
we've been rumored to trade up in the draft with guys like Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith, Joe Harris, and he never has. So and Cam Johnson being last year and this year now, I doubt we do either. So Utah at number 5. Again, as you can see, Jeremiah Fears is ranked 5th. It says they're in a severe need of a point guard, but I completely disagree because they have Isaiah Collier. They have Keontae George. I think that they're going to need a Walker Kessler replacement because I doubt they're going to pay him. So I'm going to Kaman Malawak at 5 to the Utah Jazz. Again, it's a perfect replacement for a Kessler. The Lakers were interested in Kessler. They went for Mark Williams. That trade got vetoed because of him failing a physical. Walker Kessler is the next best thing at the price range that Mark Williams was making. So I definitely think Walker Kessler and the Lakers at some point figure out something. At pick number 6 is the Brooklyn Nets. And as you can see here, Jeremiah Fears is the pick for me. I think this is absolutely perfect at 6. Again, there's a lot of talks that Trey Johnson can go ahead of him, this, and that. If you're really trying to bring back Cam Thomas for a short period of time and bottom out again next year, I think selecting a guy like Fears just makes perfect sense. You're not going to have much defense in the backcourt, but you're at least going to have a high upside player in Fears next to another high upside player in Cam Thomas. And I think that brings a little bit of excitement to Brooklyn fans, a team that can actually maybe score 100+ points a game consistently. But not only that, Fears also has, in my eyes, the upside to be a potential all-star. So I think it's a pretty fitting pick there at 6. OKC at number 7. And this is, again, such a strange pick because you have guys like Trey Johnson. You have guys like Derek Queen on the board. Do they go high upside still, even though they have every high upside player on their roster possibly available? They have Nikola Topic. They have Aaron Wiggins. They have Jalen Williams. They have Chet. They have SGA. There are so many guys on that team who are young with high upside and still progressing to this day. To me, I think they go fit. I think they need to start taking their championship window seriously, especially with SGA being extension eligible. If he declines that, it's going to be an uproar in Oklahoma City. So to me, the pick here for them is Con Kneppel, a perfect floor spacer for them at 7. Again, a little high than what most people are ever going to expect of him. But in terms of a team that just needs the floor spacing and a guy that can defend well, this is a team that was looking at Cam Johnson. Con Kneppel has Cam Johnson tendencies, 6'7" to 6'8" comparison from what, Kneppel is to what Johnson is. Again, primary 3-and-D shooter. That's what Kneppel is. That's what Johnson is. I think it just makes sense. So Kneppel there at 7 to OKC. At pick number 8 is the Portland Trailblazers. And they're a team that I feel like wouldn't let this player fall. They have Scoot as their point guard of the future. I feel like they need to move off of Anthony Simons. Same thing with Shaedon Sharpe. So for me, I'm going to give them Trey Johnson. I just don't see him falling any further than this. I don't like them going guard. I usually have them going Asa Noel. But again, they have DeAndre Ayton under contract, and they have Donovan Clingan as their young center of the future. I don't see them going Derek Queen. Trey Johnson there at 8 is an absolute steal, so I'm going to have them take him there. Chicago is up at number 9. And again, this is a very strange pick because they have a ton of needs. Lonzo, inconsistent in terms of health. Josh Giddey is up for a max extension almost. I don't know if they're going to bring him back. Vucevic is on his way out. Pat Williams is a potential trade candidate. They have a lot of needs that they need to fix. But I see them going with the big man replacement. I'm going to take Derek Queen here at number 9. This is the Vucevic replacement. I think it's just the best pick available for them there. At pick number 10 is the San Antonio Spurs. And I'm going to have them surprisingly take Asa Newell. And I say surprisingly because Kaspar's falling outside of the top 10 is definitely not something that I had on my bingo card today. But in terms of just the teams that are picking at these picks, I can see him falling past that, especially depending on his tournament play this year. It's the reason why I also did that is because this is probably the perfect fit for him as well. At pick number 11, the Miami Heat select Kasparas Jakučionis. Him next to Tyler Hero could be a very exciting point guard shooting guard combo. I think Jakučionis coming out of college is a much better playmaker than Hero was, even though Hero has progressed as a playmaker within the NBA. But I think taking away those responsibilities from him and giving it to this young guy here allows Hero to potentially reach that max potential of a 26 to 28 point per game scorer. I think in terms of development for him offensively, in terms of Kaspar's development as a playmaker, at 6'6", he can rebound, play, make, score. He can space the floor from three. Again, I don't have the highest upside on Jakučionis, but I definitely think here at 11 makes a ton of sense for him with Miami. Pick number 12 is the Houston Rockets. And again, this is just based on how I personally feel the fit is. Houston's a team that's probably going to be the top suitor for Kevin Durant. So to me, they're going to need to add guys to replace guys that they're moving off of. And that could potentially be Cam Whitmore and Jabari Smith, guys who play the 3 and the 4. So to me, the best fit under an Ime Udoka system, if they were to get a guy like Kevin Durant, is Colin Murray-Boyles. At 6'7", averaging currently 17 points and 8 rebounds, highly efficient within the paint. Not the greatest floor spacer, but a guy who is dominant on the boards and a very, very good defender. I think that's a really nice fit to put alongside a Sengun KD potential pairing. At pick number 13 is the Dallas Mavericks, and this is where I have Liam McNeely going. The 6'7" UConn forward who can space the floor. The efficiency is very bad in college, as you can see, 39% as a whole. But in terms of a three-point shooter, he has a lot of upside. So I like that pick there for Dallas, especially since they shouldn't even be here. That's a steal for them. And at pick number 14 is the Atlanta Hawks. And I'm actually going to switch it up here. I usually don't have him going lottery, but there are a ton of mock drafts that have him going potential lottery. And I do think that they are going to move off of Trae Young. So to me, I'm going Jace Richardson here with the final pick of the lottery. Michigan State point guard, currently averaging those 12 points right there. As you can see, again, I don't know if it's fully updated, but a very, very shifty point guard who can also defend at a very high caliber for his size. I think it's a really good fit for them. And with the 15th pick, the Orlando Magic, I'm going to have them take Rasheer Fleming. Noah Sengu could very well be a lottery pick, and I could be undervaluing him. Again, I haven't watched him play, so I'm trying to just keep it based on talent, upside, guys who I've watched. Sengu could very well be a lottery pick, but in terms of the teams that we've had picking here, I think these are just the best fits available for them. So Rasheer Fleming going number 15, just outside the lottery, to the Orlando Magic. A guy that can space the floor. He's shooting over 39% from three this season in college. At 20 years old as a junior, I think that he has a ton of upside as a high caliber role player, especially for a team in Orlando who's one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league. To add a guy who can bring versatility on the boards defensively, but also space the floor, I think is huge for them. San Antonio at 16. This is where I'm going to go Noah Sengu. It just makes sense. It's the French connection, and they get two high caliber upside wings in Asa Newell and Noah Sengu. I love that fit for them. And I think it's just a match made in heaven if they can figure out a way to get him at 16. This is kind of where the draft gets a little strange. You can see the best players available based on my big board was Ben Surratt, Igor Demon, and Nick Clifford. Minnesota, though, is here at 17. And this is where I do see them going more of a veteran presence. They're a team that should have been contending this year, but definitely fell on their face in the beginning of the season. And depending on if they really are going to be looking to add Kevin Durant this offseason with that Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo package, I see them needing more so players that fit a win-now culture, and that's Nick Clifford out of Colorado State. He is a 6'6" senior. He can play the point guard. He can play the two guard. He can play the three. And as you can see there, the numbers don't lie. He's averaging a double-double in college as a 6'6" forward. And it's not a double-double with assists. It's a double-double with rebounds. So a guy who is highly versatile on both ends of the floor and very efficient as well as a shooter. So I think 17 and Minnesota makes a lot of sense for him there. At pick number 18 is the OKC Thunder. Once again, they got Con Kneppel already. This is where I could potentially see some interesting picks. It's going to really depend on what their biggest need is, but this is where I'm kind of going to agree with Gary, and I'm going to select somebody along the lines of Danny Wolf at 18. Again, the projections that I have based on the big board aren't specifically where I see them going in the draft. But at 18, we have one of our biggest risers so far in this mock draft that we're doing. So I'm going to have Danny Wolf go there to OKC. He could be potentially be the Isaiah Hartenstein replacement if and when they decide to move on from him. Hartenstein's making almost like $30 million, I believe. And if they really do have to pay Chet that supermax contract that he's due for, I believe it's $74 million a year. Jalen Williams is going to have to get an extension at some point. They have Lou Dort on a $16.5 million deal. They have Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins on $10 million deals. At some point, they're going to have to move off of somebody. I think that's Hartenstein. So bringing in a cheap veteran college player in Danny Wolf could very well be the pick there. At number 19 is the Indiana Pacers. And I'm going to do this pick and the next pick at 20, and then I'm going to get your guys' thoughts. But at pick number 19, it's interesting. They're very wing heavy, so they don't need one. But they also do need a big. At the same time, I could see them looking at that in free agency or later on. They also have pick number 49. So for me, I'm going to go best available for them because Tyrese Halliburton has been one of the most inconsistent stars in the past couple of years. To me, I think it's a match made in heaven for them to go with Igor Demin at number 19. A very similar player to Halliburton, a guy that can play make, but much taller. At 6'9", I believe he is. Yeah, 6'9". Play makes at a high caliber, one of the best playmakers in this draft. The upside as a scorer is definitely 50-50. He's been very inconsistent at BYU, but with the weapons that they have in Indiana, I definitely think his playmaking is going to be very useful. At pick number 20 is the Utah Jazz, and this is where I see Ben Surratt going. I don't think he falls any further than this. It's kind of just they got to move off of him and this glitch, so hopefully, let's see. Yeah, it brought me to a new tab. My fault. Ben Surratt here at 20 to the Utah Jazz. Again, I haven't really got to watch him play because he's an overseas player. But at 6'6", he can play make, he can score, he can space the floor. I think that's a solid pickup for them because they kind of do need a two. Collier and George are their ones. There's really not a set in stone two in Utah. And again, as you can see by the face, it matches the description of a Utah Jazz player. So I just don't see him falling any further than this. First 20 picks, I'm going to start with Gary. What are your guys' thoughts on this so far?
I love that you took Wolf earlier. I think that's definitely going to happen. The one thing, like Igor, I've fallen a lot on him. Like I was really high on him early in the season, and then this last conference tournament, I'm looking at him like, I don't know. Like I'm out. Like anything in the top 10 on him, I'm out. Indiana. So are you saying they're going to move on from Halliburton?
No. I think they need to find a good backup that can at least do similar things that he does to help the bench unit continue. Because the problem is Halliburton's offensive consistency, right? They do need a big man, but I don't see them going Thomas Sorber there at 19. I can see them going with more of a veteran center out of college with that pick in 49, which again, it's going to kind of come down to who's trading up, who's trading back. Indiana's a team I could see trading up for a guy like, Maxime, Ryan Kalkbrenner. There's a couple of centers that they could try and trade up for. But in terms of just best fit and best player available at that pick, because they're contending, or somewhat contending, I should say, I think Igor is a steal for them there. Because let's just say there is a world where they decide to blow it up one day. Igor could be the Halliburton replacement. So I can see that being their pick there at 19, especially if he's there at 19.
I could see that as well. I think with the way that, as long as Rick Carlisle's still there and you got a lead playmaker that could still get high up-tempo offense, and they like to get out in the open and get points in a hurry. If you got a high-level playmaker that can orchestrate it, I think they'll be okay. But after that, I want Diego to fall to us. You know what I'm saying? So, because I'm stingy like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it as non-biased as possible, as you can see. I mean, if I was to choose a point guard to fall, I would have probably said Jace Richardson, but that's just me. Leaf or LBL, what are your thoughts so far on the picks that we've made so far throughout the first 20?
It seemed pretty accurate. Listen, I mean, for the most part, I mean, I'm not necessarily mad at the Fierce pick over Trey Johnson. However, I feel if we pick Trey Johnson, we'll be basically making it known that Cam Thomas is somewhat on borrowed time, I guess, or so to speak, if we want to say that. So, I mean, I'm one to believe that we're gonna bottom out in next year's draft as well, and then we're gonna get our pieces together and then dig into free agency a little bit for some role players, and then start competing again. Um, so I'm okay with the first pick, but I'm not okay with the first pick. But I'm okay with it. How I'm okay with it how you did it. I'm just not okay with it in my own mind. I'm just trying to get my own mind together about what should happen and what the hell we deserve, because I think we deserve a whole lot better than just Jeremiah Fairs at number 6, bro. So
I hear you. I think the beauty in what we currently are dealing with is, again, as Nets fans, we haven't seen a lottery pick since going to Brooklyn. So I think there's a more excitement no matter where the pick is made, who the pick is. I think there's going to be excitement no matter what. But there are a few players here that I would be very happy with and players that I wouldn't be happy with. And guys that I wouldn't be happy with just based on the current construction of the team that we have: VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, Kasparis. Those are the 3 players within the top 10 I would not be happy with. Outside of the top 3, if you get Fears, if you get Malawak, if you get Queen, I'd be okay with it. I don't think I'd have a problem with it, but I definitely agree. I want top 3. I mean, I've been saying that since the day after we made the trade for our picks back. And by the way, breaking news: Zaire Williams is now downgraded to out tonight with left Achilles soreness. So Cam Johnson's a lone survivor out there. Hopefully he shits the bed, because I don't like him. But
yeah, Maxwell Lewis then played his ass off out of nowhere yesterday. So I mean, and then we were like a bucket away from defeating the defending champions of the Boston Celtics.
The champions.
So, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it looked like everything I said. I said less than 25 wins, and that's what it's looking like. So,
I mean, I wouldn't rule out 27 still, because you got to play Dallas twice, and they may have to forfeit one or both of those to us. You got to play. I believe we play Philly one more time, if I'm not mistaken. May not.
No, I don't think we got no more Philly games. Philly is
Philly. I know we play Washington one more time. I believe we play. Toronto
we are going to lose to Washington. Washington got better after the trade deadline. Trust me.
I do agree with that. I do think, though, that they're going to sit Marcus Smart, Middleton, some of those guys the remainder of the season very shortly, because they're now potentially competing with Utah for the best pick odds. So.
I believe that, but I honestly believe that we still gonna lose to them, because I think the bottom out period has happened for them. Mm-hmm. I don't think they really necessarily concerned with the sweepstakes. I mean, for them in Charlotte, they gotta know that they're not getting the number 1 overall pick, man. The league doesn't care about them.
See, it's funny too, because I personally think Charlotte falling to 3 or 4 and getting Edgecombe is their best fit. Like, to me,
I think it is too.
I think that's so much more exciting for them, because if they can find a way to keep LaMelo for one more year, a pairing of LaMelo, VJ Miller, Tajon Saloon, and Mark Williams as your potential starting 5 is huge. Even if you have Miles Bridges in replacement of Tajon Saloon, that's still an incredible starting 5 that I personally think should be playing caliber. Like, to me, on paper, that starting 5 is very similar to what this year's Detroit Pistons starting 5 was, right? You had Cade, you had Ivy, you had Malik Beasley, you had Tobias Harris, you had Jalen Duren. Like, to me, it's very similar in terms of upside, fun players to watch, the athleticism, the defense, the offensive abilities. There's just a lot going for them if they can get a guy like Edgecombe at 4. And I mean, even if Charlotte falls to 6, I think Trey Johnson is another guy that perfectly fits them. As long as you're putting a 2 or a center on that team in this draft, I think they're going to have a lot going forward for them if they can find a way to just keep LaMelo happy for another year or 2.
I'm cool with that. I think that's a perfect idea. I think wing shooter or some type of athletic guard or big, because Mark Williams is probably going to be on the move again. But at the same time,
that's where I kind of disagree, because of that failed physical. I don't know if they're going to be able to move him. I think the next centers in line in terms of what teams are going to look for is Claxton and Walker Kessler. I think those are the 2 up next centers. Because originally those were the 2 names that were also mentioned alongside Mark Williams for the Lakers. So to me, I think they're going to pivot to Walker Kessler and Claxton because of that failed physical. Unless if they can get Mark Williams for cheaper than what they gave up originally. But I don't know.
I'm cool with that. I mean, Claxton for Zach Edey, I'm cool with that, man.
No, we're not. We are not going back to the Zach Edey train, Leaf. Come on, we're not doing that.
Claxton for Zach Edey, and then we go out and go get Zion. Man, I'm cool with that. Let's go.
Oh my God, I cannot. I still remember you and I specifically going back and forth like there was no tomorrow during last year's draft process, and you saying Zach Edey was going to be the best player in the draft class. He's been solid. I still can't see it. I still can't see it.
I mean, it's still time. I mean, the Nikola Topic question mark is still up in the air. Stephon Castle has been amazing. Alex Starr has been pity patting around, but he had the highest point output out of all the rookies so far this year.
Oh,
but,
he beat Stephon Castle? He beat him?
No, he had the highest point game, because he had 34 last night against the Nuggets. But
that's what I meant. Yeah, I thought Castle had like a 35-point game, but
I think Castle. I don't remember what Castle had. Castle might have had 31 or something like that. I don't know if I remember.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Castle might win this award. I think Castle probably got the most upside, but I think Zach Edey, in terms of importance on the team and the team that he's on, I still think he's going to be. He's going to have time to fill out. I think his improvement in terms of what they need is going to get better and better. But
yeah, I just looked it up. It looks like Stephon Castle had 33.
Right.
Nets starting 5 versus Atlanta just got posted. Keon Johnson, Tyrese Martin, Jalen Wilson, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton. If that team fucking wins tonight after Philly won, I'm gonna throw a fucking fit. I just want you all to know it. And I'm blatantly being honest. I don't give a shit. I will whine my fucking ass off as a grown man, and I will openly admit it. Because if we win this game after Philly won, and we can have sole position of the 5th spot by a game or a game and a half, then this organization is a joke. But again, I'm trying not to jump the gun. I just hope we lose tonight.
Dylan, bro. Like, if we win this game tonight, it's not our fault. It's clearly Atlanta just playing down to calm, bro. Like, we have no business. That starting lineup that you just named has no business on an NBA court, like, at all. Like, come on, like. No, if we win this
injury report for tonight, is Trey playing?
Trey is playing. Capella's out. Obviously, Jalen Johnson's out.
Kobe Bufkin's out for the season.
Kobe's out.
LeVert and Larry Nance.
All I know is Dyson Daniels and Zachary Richardson is playing, bro. So I mean,
yeah,
Dyson Daniels has been incredible this season, man.
He has. He definitely has.
So I don't know what we do with him.
Yeah, we got to start picking it back up, though, because the game does start in 23 minutes. Appreciate you guys, though, for the insight. With the 21st pick, Brooklyn is back up, and this is where I have them going Thomas Sorber. I don't think they pass up on the opportunity of what will be the best young upside center on the board to this point, right? You don't have any more real young upside bigs moving forward, right? You got Maxime, you got Johni Broome. The next upside big, but he's only 6'10", is Beringer. So I wouldn't really take the risk of hoping that he's there at the 35, 36 spots. Thomas Sorber at 6'10" out of Georgetown. Very similar to Derek Queen in terms of inside dominance. I actually think Sorber's a bit more athletic at 6'10", but he's only 19 years old and he's already 255. This is definitely an out-of-the-ordinary pick for a guy like Sean Marks, who just refuses to pick guys who are taller than himself, and also guys who can actually play the center position in terms of weight-wise. So this is a nice pick if they actually are able to land him at 21. I do think that he would be the Day'Ron Sharpe replacement for now until Nick Claxton's moved. But ultimately, I think Thomas Sorber and Jeremiah Fears, if those are your first 2 picks, you have definitely won the consolation prize in terms of draft picks, right? You missed out on top 3. You weren't able to get the flag sweepstakes. You weren't able to get the New Jersey homegrown Dylan Harper. But you were at least able to fill the 2 biggest needs on this team, which is a long-term center and a long-term point guard, both of which have high upside. And I think that's where I'm kind of going with the Nets picks in terms of this mock draft. At 22 is the Miami Heat. This is a perfect fit here for Hugo Gonzalez. I don't know why it says they're in a high need of a power forward and a center when they have Bam Adebayo and Kel'el Ware. I just don't see them really needing that. Hugo Gonzalez, to me, though, is a very nice fit at the wing position, and it's a wings league. They're filling up on wings in terms of what they've had on their current roster versus what they're doing in this draft. At 6'6", he would be a nice backup to a guy like Jaime Jaquez for his first season, but I definitely can see some high upside as a floor spacer in Miami. And again, whoever Miami drafts, you have to expect is going to be a borderline star because they're by far the best team in terms of development. With Atlanta here at 23, this is where I can see Janai Broome going. They're kind of in need of a center once they move off of Clint Capella, which he will be a free agent this offseason. They're kind of already set at the wing positions. They have Dyson. They have Jalen Johnson. If you look at the rest of their roster here, they have Risha Shar. I don't see them trying to find a replacement for him. So to me, I think they need to back up big alongside Onyeka Okongwu, which is why I'm going to have them select Janai Broome here at 23. Could be a little higher than expected. You definitely could go wing here, but I'm trying to just base it on, teams that are kind of going to need certain positions as well. And that kind of leads me here to pick number 24 with Orlando. There's no reason that he should fall further than this, and that's the French 6'4" guard Nolan Traore. In terms of what Orlando needs, it's not exactly what they need, but when you're looking at the upside of a player, this is a guy who was projected top 5 before the college basketball season started. He was over guys like VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, Kaban Malawak. He was being debated as whether or not he would go potentially over Dylan Harper, and he has clearly not lived up to the expectation, but the upside is still there, especially if he is able to find minutes on a team. I think Cole Anthony gets moved at some point soon for Orlando, so a backup point guard slot for Traore on a contender could definitely be intriguing for them. And with the 25th pick, we have the Washington Wizards. They already selected Ace Bailey. This is where I can kind of see them going potentially point guard. They definitely need a center, but there's really no great ones here on the board currently. I'm going to have them. It's tough. They're so bad they could go best available, and that's actually what I'm going to give them. I'm going to go Carter Bryant. He has some of the highest upside in terms of outside the lottery picks in this year's draft. So to me, I think it's a no-brainer to go with the best available player in terms of upside, especially when you're such a bad organization currently. You kind of just need to go with what you can go with. At pick number 26, they also have pick number 27 in this one. I'm not sure if these rankings are correct currently, but Brooklyn is up back-to-back. They already got their point guard. They already got their center, and this is a beautiful spot here for him at 26. Will Riley, the 6'8" forward out of Illinois. Again, he reminds me of a guy like Trey Murphy, lesser athletic, but in terms of the floor spacing, the way that he can create his own shot off the dribble, and the way that he can defensively be valuable, I can see him being a very, very likely Trey Murphy comp. And I think that's a perfect fit there for Brooklyn at 26. And at number 27 is also Brooklyn, where I'm going to have them change it up a little bit. I'm going to have them go with JT Toppin. I think, in terms of players who fit a mold, Toppin is a guy that would fit perfectly under a Jordi Fernandez system playing at Texas Tech. If you've watched Texas Tech over the past 10 years in terms of college basketball, they're a very gritty, high defensive team. And I think that's exactly what Jordi Fernandez is implementing here in Brooklyn. You can see the stats right there. Borderline double-double at 18 points, 9 rebounds, highly efficient from the field, a high flyer who can, space the floor. Not the greatest floor spacer, but he definitely needs some improvements. I can see him going as high as 27. Yeah, I think if Brooklyn has that pick, it's perfect.
He's a Sean Marks type of guy too. He's a long wing. I think he can stretch the floor. I think he's a floor spacer for sure.
Yeah, I got to double check on what his current 3-point percentage is. So Leaf and LBL, if you guys want to give your thoughts in terms of just Brooklyn's first round picks, what do you think?
He has some tree trunks for legs. Stopping, he's got a really strong base. You know what I mean? For someone who can still jump, Because usually you think of jumpers as guys that are, slim or something,
Yeah. I'm looking at the stats right now. He's actually averaging 32% from 3. So it's not the worst. It's not average, but he's just below average in terms of 3-point shooting, which isn't the worst in the world. It's definitely something to improve on. If you look at Noah Clowney, when we drafted him, he was a sub 28% 3-point shooter. He wasn't great in college, but he had the upside to be a very solid 3-point shooter. So to me, I think that this is a really good fit for Toppin and the Nets. I just think if you're really looking to fill out the roster properly, so far in this draft, you've drafted a point guard, you've drafted a center, you've drafted a guy that can play the 2 and the 3, and you've also drafted a guy that plays the 4. You're kind of filling every positional need possible.
Yeah, I have to vehemently disagree. You took Carter Bryant? Carter Bryant stinks.
No. I took Carter Bryant, went to Washington.
Oh, okay. I was about to say,
so the reason why Bryant is so high on draft boards is because he is 6'8", he is 225. He's one of the rawest prospects out there in terms of this year's draft. and a team is going to draft highly on him potentially just because of the upside that he has. It's very Carter Bryant this year is very similar to last year's Tajon Saloon.
Where did you have Noah Senge going?
Noah Senge, I had him going 16 to San Antonio.
Above or below Carter Bryant?
Oh, above by far. Here, I'll show you. I'll show you what the actual draft looks like.
Also, a guy that was really highly, considered coming out of high school. Like if you look at the ratings,
this is what the top. Yeah, this is what the draft looks like so far.
Yeah, no, I thought Carter Bryant.
Yeah.
With all the hype of with him coming out of high school, I watched a lot of Arizona, because of the time they come on. But I thought he was going to be phenomenal. But he's not. He doesn't look that much more athletic than anybody else. And if his athleticism jumped off the screen to me, then I could overlook the poor numbers. I don't care about the numbers. Like for instance, I like Yegor Demin. I think in an NBA offense with NBA spacing at 6'9", Yegor is worth taking a flyer in the later rounds.
Like you wouldn't touch him in the top 10, like people were saying a couple months ago, right? Like you wouldn't take him.
No, he's had too poor of a showing to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It'd be irresponsible.
Yeah, but like I said, you gotta remember in terms of upside, some teams are going to draft based on the highest upside because of how bad they are, and that's Washington. Like at 25, that's a great pick, only because I make the comparison with Tajon Saloon from last year because Saloon wasn't projected top 10 last year, but he was one of the highest upside prospects. He's like 6'8", 6'9", similar build to Carter Bryant, similar skill set to Carter Bryant in terms of if he is fully developed and reaches a peak, he is a high caliber two-way player. So I think that's where the upside kind of happens with Bryant.
Where did you have Rasheer going?
Rasheer, so if you can see the screen right here, I have what we've picked.
Yeah,
so far.
I'm on a cell phone, so
okay. So at number 1, I'll go in order real quick as a quick recap. Flag at 1, Harper at 2, Edgecombe at 3, Ace at 4, Malawak at 5, Fears at 6, Kneppel at 7, Trey Johnson at 8, Derek Queen at 9, Austin Noel at 10, Kasparis at 11, Colin Murray Boyles at 12, Liam McNeely at 13, Jace Richardson at 14 to the Hawks, Rasheer Fleming at 15 to the Magic, Noah Sangu 16 to the Spurs, Nick Clifford 17 to the Timberwolves, Danny Wolf 18 to the Thunder, Igor at 19 to the Pacers, Ben Seraph at 20 to the Jazz, Thomas Sorber at 21 to the Nets, Hugo Gonzalez at 22 to the Heat, Janai Broom at 23 to the Hawks, Traore at 24 to the Magic, Bryant at 25 to the Wizards, and then Will Riley and JT Toppin at 26 and 27 to the Nets. That's what we have so far.
Yeah, the Will Riley comp is Cam Johnson. I feel like I'm looking at the exact same player. Oh my God! I
can agree with that. I can agree with that. I don't want to compare him to him because I just don't like Johnson, but bias aside, I can see it.
Not just because they kind of look alike, but he's not awkward, but you see how Cam Johnson's a little stiff, 3-point shooter. I think he has better handle than Cam Johnson. Will Riley would be a steal down there, but I just think I would have liked to have. I'm hoping the Nets get Dink Pate.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that because I just again if we're not in the running for the big guards that's in the top of the draft, why not take a kid who
has upside,
has upside and can play point guard?
I definitely agree. Yeah, because he can be a point forward. He's 6'8". He can play make. The shooting's very inconsistent, but again, under Jordy, that's something that could be fixed, I think, very easily.
Right, and with better players around you, that could fix. And he's a baby. He's 18.
Yeah.
He went to the G League at 17, thought he was, going to light the world on fire, and then he struggled. He was a point guard last year. This year they put him at small forward so that he could score and get some reps in trying to, score the ball, which he's done some. But that's the problem with kids who go to the G League. They're playing against men, and they're playing against men who are trying to hold on to their basketball dream. So they're going hard. They're not passing. It's kind of rough to show what you are as a young prospect out there. And I think he might be a steal. I think they could do something to get him and be a steal. And then where did you have like the big doofy centers going? I saw you had Danny Wolf go.
I do have Danny Wolf going early to the Thunder, especially if they keep that pick simply because I think they need a Hartenstein replacement for when they have to pay SGA.
You don't think Reynald could sneak?
Yeah, I don't have
in?
any other centers outside of. So that's where I'm actually debating this right now with Boston. I could definitely see him going between 28 through 30, simply because you have Boston, the Clippers, and then the Suns at 30. So let's get back to this real quickly too, because we only have 10 minutes until the game starts. We're probably going to lapse in time, but that's all right. I know, Gary, if you have to head out and watch the game, that's completely cool as well. But Boston at 28, I'm going to have them go Cam Jones, 6'5" guard, senior out of Marquette. High caliber scorer, can play defense as well. And again, it's just a guy who's immediately you can plug into a role player spot. So as a contender, I think that's a great pick. At 29, I have LeBarian Filan going to the Clippers. I think they just need a point guard for the long term. And I think developing under a guy like James Harden can be very beneficial for him. And at number 30 is the Phoenix Suns. Again, this is just a horrible spot for them in terms of a franchise. They have Beal under contract for 2 additional years after this. They have KD, who they need to move off of. They have Devin Booker, who they have to make happy. Depending on the package that they get, let's just say realistically that KD goes to Houston. You're getting back Cam Whitmore. You're getting back Jabari Smith. You're maybe getting Dillon Brooks as well. To me, the wings isn't going to be a problem for them. So I'm actually going to have Maxime go here with the final first-round pick to the Phoenix Suns. They really need a big man badly. So I think this is a guy that they can plug in immediately as a starter and fit very well next to a Devin Booker as the primary facilitator. At pick number 31, with the first pick in the second round, is the Minnesota Timberwolves, surprisingly. So it looks like that changed. It was originally Boston. But with the 31st pick in Minnesota, I'm going to have them go with Yaxel Lendeborg out of UAB. I think this is just a perfect fit. He is an absolute dog if you've watched him play. Like I said earlier in this, he had put up a 30-20 game 2 games ago, and he just put up a 20-20 game, I believe, either yesterday or the day before. And that was just before he got hurt in that game. So he didn't even finish the game, and he was able to put up a 20-20. So to me, he's rising of draft boards left and right. Boston at 32. This is where I'm going to have them go Addo Thiaro. I think, again, in terms of a team that's contending, go with the veteran guys that you can plug in right away. Boston's bench by far is not a great thing. And I think if there's a world where they can add a Cam Jones and an Addo Thiaro, that they're going to have a much deeper bench moving forward. At pick number 33 is the Charlotte Hornets. They also do have pick number 34. Kind of got to go best available for them. So to me, I feel like their best need is probably Boogie Flan, maybe Juan Beringer, but I also, just in terms of best available, there's draft boards that have Noah Penda going within the top 20. I don't agree. I see him late first round, early second round. But I am going to have them take Noah Penda here, and then I'm also going to have them take Juan Beringer. I think they're going to try and make Boogie Flan as happy as possible. So I'm going to have Beringer go there at 34. This is Brooklyn now. Again, I would have loved Boogie if this was a different world, but I am going to pass up on him and go Ding Pate. I just think with the injury to Boogie and the inefficiency issues that he's had throughout college, that there is a world that he could potentially fall. Again, he is coming back now for a tournament play, so this could very well change, within the next week, depending on how he plays in their first round matchup. But I have Ding Pate as the final pick for the Brooklyn Nets at 36. Or I'm sorry, at 35. Philly at 36. This is where it gets a little strange because, again, I'm a guy that tries to do trades and make the picks make the most sense. Just looking at their roster, you have Embiid, you need a replacement for him. You have Paul George, you need a replacement for him. You have Maxey. He's shown that he can't be a first option, that's for sure. Kelly Oubre, solid role player. Andre Drummond, solid role player. Quentin Grimes, not sure if he'll be back. He's on a 1-year deal. Jared McCain, so they kind of have their guards set. Eric Gordon, 2-year minimum. It's a strange pick for sure. I'm going to have them go best available. I'm going to have them take Boogie Flan. Especially if Kyle Lowry doesn't come back, they're going to need a backup. And Philly selecting a guy like him with the upside that he has is definitely something that I would hate to see. But again, trying to keep it as realistic as possible. At 37 is the Detroit Pistons. To me, this is a no-brainer for me. I think they go with a guy like Miles Bird. We have him projected 41. We're going to have him being taken here at 37. Very, very solid 3-and-D player. At 6'7", he can play the 2, he can play the 3. I think he could be a very solid replacement for a guy like Malik Beasley, who is on an expiring contract for them. So to me, this just is a no-brainer for Detroit at 37. At number 38 is the Sacramento Kings, and this is where I'm going to have Alex Karaban go. Again, a team that kind of doesn't know what they're doing. Are they competing? Are they tanking? Who knows? So to me, go with a guy that they can plug in right away as a depth piece in Alex Karaban. A perfect fit here at 39 for Toronto, and we have him projected 38, but I'm going to take him here to the Toronto Raptors. This will be the Jakob Poeltl replacement within the near future. 7'1" center. I mean, he doesn't look 270, but he is averaging 19.5 points, 9 rebounds, and 65% from the field. A very high upside senior. I mean, there's not a lot of seniors that you can say have upside, but Kalkbrenner, to me, I think is a guy that definitely has some hidden talents that can still be unlocked at the NBA level. Breezy, appreciate that, man. Thank you. Make sure to tap the like button. Subscribe to both podcasts. We're actually streaming from both right now. The Nets Press podcast, which is mine, and of course, Gary and I's, which is the BK Nothing But Nets podcast. If you're watching from Twitter as well, make sure to follow. But with the 40th overall pick is the San Antonio Spurs. We've selected Asa Newell. We've selected Noah Sengu for them here. To me, I feel like they're kind of in need of a guard. They could also go big man, but I feel like they're a little too far out on this to go big. To me, the perfect fit for them, honestly, is a guy like Darian Williams. 6'6" shooting guard out of Texas Tech. And again, there's just certain teams, when you draft a player that played at this college, you know they're going to be solid no matter what. And Texas Tech is one of those schools. They're just such a gritty defensive team that produces some very, very solid talent. JT Toppin being one of the guys this year, and now Darian Williams going to San Antonio in this mock draft. I just love the fit for them there. Keep the guys in Texas, So for Golden State at 41, again, an interesting pick, but I think in terms of value, they kind of just have to. And that's Ian Jackson, a guy that has a ton of upside. The efficiency got much better throughout the season. At one point, he was shooting like 37% from the field, but up to 12 points on 3 rebounds. Not a good playmaker whatsoever, as you can see, but a guy that has high upside in terms of a scorer. And I think with Steph aging, with Butler aging, they're going to need a guy that can score off the bench, and I think that's Ian Jackson. Let's see. Pick 42, Orlando. They've selected Nolan Traore. They've selected Rasheer Fleming. I think this is where a guy like Alex Tui goes, a guy that can space the floor at 6'8". There's Bogdanovich comparisons to him as well. I think that pick is just self-explanatory. With Washington here, this team pisses me off because they have to trade up in the second round. They have pick 43, 47, and 52 currently. I don't see them selecting 5 guys. It just doesn't make sense. But for me, I think this is where they go upside again, and they go with a guy like Rocco Zikarsky. They need a center. They're very, very slim at that position currently on their roster. So Zikarsky is the best available center on the board. I think that they have to take him in hopes that he doesn't get taken later on in the draft. At pick number 44 is OKC, and this is their final pick of the 2025 draft. And this is where I'm going to have them go with a defensive caliber wing. Again, a guy with some upside. And to me, that's going to be Drake Powell out of UNC. As a scorer, he has not shown much. As you can see, 7.5 points, 49.5% from the field. But he is a very, very gritty defender, and I think that's something that they value very highly over in OKC. With the pick. Utah Jazz, yeah, you think so?
Amazing pick.
Why do you say that?
I've watched him all summer. I watched him all last year, high school ball before he committed to North Carolina. I knew that was a bad mistake for him, but yeah. I swear he looked like Kawhi Leonard in high school. He looked like Kawhi.
Wow.
The type of defense he plays.
I mean, he was projected top 10 in the first mock draft of this year.
Yeah, no,
that's how far he fell. Yeah, he still has.
I saw him at seven, before, but he's went to UNC, and that's the danger. You go to the wrong school, you don't get the minutes, or the pairing is wrong, or you don't get the ball. Like, yeah. I think that's kind of what happened with Ace and Dylan. Both of them could 100%. Not prosper.
Yeah, if Ace was playing at Kentucky and Harper was playing at a team, maybe like a Texas Tech, like they would by far be much better than what they looked like at Rutgers, and that's saying something because they still looked like 2 of the top 5 players in the country.
Right. I said when Ace was going there, this is the wrong school for Ace. I'm not saying he can't be great, but the offense with Stephen Pikiell, it's antiquated. It's like something out of the 90s. There's two bigs on the block. Like their offense, like,
and they're not even real bigs.
Run some floppy action for Ace. It's just not an offense that's gonna make you look good in it, right? You're not gonna shine in that offense. You're not gonna get the most out of him. I didn't like him going there to start with, but he wanted to play with Dylan. Dylan's a Jersey kid. It is what it is.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And Gerard, I appreciate the feedback as well. LBL, I'll let you respond real quickly before we start kicking this back up again. Was it LBL that was talking, or was it Pod?
It was me before, but no, I was done. I only wanted to talk about Drake Powell.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Back to the draft. We're at pick 45, so we're halfway through the second round. Malawak and Ben Saraf were the picks for Utah originally, and I think, again, this is just a steal at the position with the upside that the player has, and that's Isaiah Evans out of Duke. Again, another guy who was projected first round prior to this season. Still, some draft boards have him going as high as like 28. Again, I just don't see it in terms of how many risers and fallers there's been in this class. I definitely think that he is a mid-second round pick currently. But if Utah can select Saraf Malawak and connect that Duke connection with Isaiah Evans late in the second round, I think that's a pretty solid draft for them, because Saraf can play the 1, he can play the 2, Malawak being the Walker Kessler replacement, and Isaiah Evans being a nice role player to have off the bench long term. Definitely not a bad draft class for them if they miss out on that top 3 pick. Chicago here in no man's land at 46. They got Derek Queen. There's really not a lot of players in terms of upside here that you can really take. Cannon Catchings, I don't even know if he's actually going to declare for the draft. This was a guy who was projected early second, late first at some point in time. His upside was through the roof, but he had a horrible season at BYU. So I don't know if I can really select him here, even though that's kind of the route that I was thinking. To me, I think the best pick available here, because they have Queen, you don't know what they're going to do with Pat Williams, whether or not they trade him. I think Stojakovic here, honestly, with Chicago at 46 is a very solid pick. He just came off of a 37-point game for Cal. He's only a sophomore, so there's still upside to be had there, especially if they can keep guys like Lonzo and Giddey. I think having a guy that can space the floor like Stojakovic can is definitely a position that they could benefit off of. And here we go again. Washington, my favorite team to draft for in this, because they have one more pick after this. Again, you got to just go best available. And to me, that's this guy here. I'm not going to pronounce the name. You guys can take your shots at it all you want. I looked up his stats because they're absolutely insane. I'm going to try and find them again real quickly here before moving on. Let's see. Where do they have him projected on Tankathon? Currently playing overseas, he's averaging 14.7 rebounds, 3 assists, almost a block and a steal per game. He's shooting 52% from the field and 39% from 3. In terms of advanced stats, his per 36 is 16.6 points per game, 8.6 rebounds, 3.6 steal, 3.6 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. And again, the same percentages. His NBA projected efficiency in terms of true shooting and 3-point percentage, his true shooting being 62.6%, and his NBA 3-point percentage based on advanced stats is 35.1. So again, high upside, 6'11" forward. I think that's a really solid fit for Washington there, especially after drafting a guard and a wing already. Utah backup, and again, you kind of just have to go best available upside, and to me, that's Cannon Catchings. I can't have him pass up here. At 48, if he declares, there's no reason that he shouldn't go. Indiana is here, and this is kind of, again, a rough spot. All the centers are off the board, which is why I say I would probably have them trade up. I don't see them reaching on a center like this, so they'd have to wait for free agency. But to me, this is one of my favorite players in this year's draft class in terms of seniors. It could be a little biased because I'm a little bit of an FSU guy, mainly for football. But Jameer Watkins, 6'7" out of Florida State, averaging 18 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and roughly 43% from the field. 3-and-D. That's quite literally all he is. He's a high caliber role player at this level. I can see a mixture of like a Dorian Finney-Smith like player with him. At pick number 50 is the Los Angeles Clippers. We already selected point guard for them with LeBarian Philon. Bless you. And again, kind of an issue with the board here, as you can see, guards kind of filling up what we have going on here, which again is the reason why I say trades are usually more likely to happen because of this. But with the Clippers pick here, I could see them going with a guy maybe like Peyton Sandford or Sion James. And I think just in terms of fit, you got to go Sion James. High caliber 3 and D once again. Efficient, not going to take high volume shots, but a guy that's just going to get it done on both ends of the floor. And with the 51st pick is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I believe they also have one more, and our best friend, the Washington Wizards, are up next. But at 51, I mean, I would have loved Jameer Watkins there. I would have loved Sion James there, just in terms of fit by what they need. But to me, I think there's no other second best option than Tucker DeVries out of West Virginia. 15 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds. Again, 3 and D. A guy that can just space the floor, catch and shoot off the dribble, create his own shot. Kind of reminds me a little bit of a Max Strus, just with better ball handling. I love that fit for them, though. There, the deeper that team gets, the harder it's going to be to beat them. I think Tucker DeVries is a guy that you can plug in right away. Here we go again. Washington, like I said. They haven't selected a point guard. You have to go point guard. Xavier Lee, maybe not the highest upside, but at 6'4", averaging 17 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds, and 44% from the field. Definitely a solid piece to put alongside a Jordan Poole, depending on if they have him play the 1 or the 2. Xavier Lee, if he is to play the 1 next to Poole, I definitely think could be a very high caliber role player to help benefit Poole's lack of decision making in terms of being a ball handler. So to me, it's a very solid pick, especially at 52. The talent's there. With the 53rd pick is the Los Angeles Lakers, and I know we're kind of lapsing in time, so I'm trying to be a little bit quicker here. But I'm going to go Peyton Sandford. It just makes the most sense. You're trying to build win now culture in Los Angeles with the recent acquisition of Luka Doncic, and there's no better option to do that than one of the best 3-point shooters in this class. Senior 6'8" forward Peyton Sandford out of Iowa. You can see the stats on the screen there. Let's see, with Memphis, tough. Again, because there's certain players in this class or on this website that aren't here. Like RJ Lewis would have already been drafted. Alex Condon would have already been drafted. But because there are not players that are available on the website, we can't. So we're kind of just trying to work with best case scenario. And I think with this, it's going to be Hunter Salas out of Wake Forest. 6'5", can play the 2, can play the 1. But you can see the stats on screen. Very solid piece for a Memphis team that's looking to contend right now. With the Knicks pick, I'm just going to go, again, they have 2 picks, but I'm going to go best available for them because one of their picks is forfeited. So to me, Tahad Pettiford, especially with the lack of bigs here, you got to go with the highest upside player there, especially with how bad their bench is. Phoenix is here at 56, and they've already selected Maxime with the 30th overall pick. I'm going to go with Joe Sansanin, freshman, 6'5" point guard out of Arizona State. Stats on screen there show very solid player with some upside. I think their 2 biggest needs, especially let's say if they do trade KD, is going to be point guard and center. So I think filling those needs in this draft is definitely a win for them. A forfeited pick for the Knicks, but we're just going to make it as realistic as possible. And I think that's Mackenzie Makabu out of Indiana. I'm totally butchering that last name, so don't mind me. But solid picks. Again, if that pick wasn't forfeited, it would be very good for them. Rasheer Fleming, Nolan Traore, and Alex Tui so far have been the Orlando Magic picks, and this is their final pick of the day. To me, I feel like they've got to go just best available based on need. And to me, that would be a guy probably like Kadary Richmond is very good, but I don't see them needing another point guard. I would have to say KJ Lewis. Again, if they move off of Cole Anthony, they're going to need some guard depth there. Gary, appreciate you for joining, man.
Appreciate you.
Houston here. Yep, have a good one, bro. Houston here at 59 with the second to last pick of the draft. They've already selected Colin Murray Boyles. And again, this is just a perfect fit for them. Kadary Richmond, 6'6", senior out of St. John's, 13 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds. He just had a triple-double last week, 49% from the field. Absolutely love the fit for them there. Could be a high-caliber second option point guard coming off the bench for them. And with the final pick of the draft with the Cleveland Cavaliers at picks number 60, for those of you who are still here, I appreciate you guys all for joining. Leaf, LBL, Gary, appreciate you guys for tuning in as well. Make sure to subscribe to both the Nets Press podcast and the BK Nothing But Nets podcast, depending on which one you're watching on. Feel free to subscribe on both. If you're watching on Twitter, make sure to leave a follow as well. But with the final pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to select, I'm going to go Baba Miller here, one of my favorite potential late round steals if he does declare for the draft. at 6'11", 215. The small forward / power forwards averaging 11.7 rebounds on 48% from the field. I think that just in terms of what we're working with this draft, it's by far best case scenario for Cleveland walking away with him and Tucker DeVries. So here's the full list. I am going to save this and post this. I will drop a link on Twitter. I know the Nets game started, so I want to get you guys out of here as quick as possible. Final thoughts, Pod, LBL, what are you guys thinking? We'll start with Pod. What are your thoughts on this entire 2-round mock draft?
I think it's good. We overlap in some places. I don't believe anybody is going to pass up a 6'10", 38% from three scorer like Ace. I don't think he's going past 3. But outside of that, I think it's pretty spot on where you have things, and it just goes again. I hate to beat a dead horse, but these other teams are trying really, really fucking hard to get down to this, to get down to where the Nets should be, really, to be honest. There's a hell of an opportunity. We could come away from this draft with a hell of a team, man. Like it's really, really intriguing. But I think it's good. I think it's really good. And we might fight in a couple of places, but I don't think you didn't do anything crazy. Like you didn't put Jonas going top 3 or some shit like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, this is good. This is good. I thought I was gonna be more combative, but I'm okay with this.
Cool, man. Cool. I appreciate the insight. Appreciate the love as well. LBL, what are your final thoughts on the 2-round mock draft? Anything that you would change specifically? We'll do trade ups in the next one to try and make it a little bit more accurate than some of these picks. Like Pod said, there's a couple of overlapping picks that I feel like may or may not be here, especially teams like Washington or Orlando, maybe Boston, Charlotte, OKC, teams that kind of have multiple picks that don't need them. What are your thoughts on the draft class though as a whole? Full 2-round mock draft. Give us your thoughts. If he's still here, LBL, if you're still here, it's muted. I don't know if he's still here though.
Yeah, probably. He probably bounced thinking because the game started.
Yeah, that's true. All right, yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Like I said before, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube at the BK Nothing But Nets podcast. Also, feel free to subscribe to me at the Nets Press podcast. This is where we're going to be doing all of our mock drafts, big boards, draft analysis. I will start doing Nets content there very shortly. I know it says Nets Press, but I'm definitely trying to keep more active with college basketball, especially since we have picks. Like I said, I've been a Nets fan my whole life. I'm 23. I've never been able to actually be excited for a draft class as an adult. We have not had a pick, in the lottery since moving to Brooklyn. Our last pick was the final year of playing in New Jersey. So to me, this is the most exciting thing we have going for us. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to follow. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at NetsPress. Also, feel free to follow me, my college basketball page on Instagram. It's called CBB Draft U. I will be posting this mock draft specifically, some of the picks, and a link over there as well. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Pod, if you want to plug in your Twitter real quickly or anywhere that we can find you, feel free. And we're going to head out of here.
Pod Thorn on Twitter. Talk to y'all later.
Appreciate it, fellas. Have a good one.
Don't miss a tweet, post, story, or video. 3D Boxing is on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Hit the subscribe button now to stay inside the ring.